Assemble! Raise your hand if this is the first time you've ever been to space. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And you look like melted ice cream. My name is Shalyah Dowd.
That is America's ass. I'm Shalyah Evans.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film I have been waiting for before I knew that I would ever wait for films, Avengers Endgame.
So I think my job here is done. I'm just going to bail out. You guys are good, right? You don't need me here for this?
Yeah. Why are you here?
Yeah.
With us for easily 95% of all of our Marvel content is the fabulous Shalyah Evans, all the way from the west coast of the United States of America. Hello!
Hello! I am thrilled to be here, and I've based my whole week around this moment.
It's so nice to have you back. You obviously, for listeners who are not familiar, Shalyah and I tackled before Infinity War. We tackled 3 separate, about hour and a half to 2 hour long each podcasts about all 3 phases of the MCU up to that point.
Which was a great primer for me, by the way, because I needed a reminder of the whole thing.
Honestly, I was like, I'm like a worse fan now, like in a good way, but like in an insufferable way than before. We did our recap of everything before we went back and watched everything, because like now I just know too much. I mean, I know enough, but now I'm like worse to talk to.
I disagree. I think you are.
I think you.
Oh yeah,
you groomed me.
I literally.
You created a friend.
I totally did.
I mean, Matt's been trying this with me for years, and he's completely failed with me. So
Untrue.
you are the more loved child.
Yeah,
I'm an easy victim. I aim to please.
Yeah. For listeners who want to write in about Avengers Endgame, now this is obviously. The problem with Endgame right now is the spoiler part of it. I just want to say right up front, we are going to be spoiling Endgame throughout this episode. So if you have not seen Endgame, I would say just tune out at this particular moment.
Snap yourself out of here right the F
If
now.
you haven't seen Endgame, also, you're probably one of only 10 people on the planet. Once you have seen Endgame, please feel free to email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter. People have emailed us in for this episode. Normally, we would do those emails up front, but I think we're going to do those emails at the back just to save just a few of those spoilers for our discussion.
And it will also help us doing them at the back, too, because the... yeah, I knew you'd like that one.
It always helps.
Yeah. This is America's ass.
It is America's ass. Only because the breadth of emails, and I do have to say that we've gotten, even after this movie has been out for one day, we're recording this Saturday morning, we've all seen it Friday evening. The amount of depth and information that our listeners have brought in, like, I feel like if we did them up front, it wouldn't, like, we might cover a lot of it, but we'll still reference the stuff that we don't. It'll actually help cull down the amazing amount of information and thoughts.
I don't know why this flurry of emails wasn't here for a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting existence. I don't know why.
Well,
people weren't emailing us about the man who killed Don Quixote like this.
Okay, I was going to say, for the pigeon one, that was our 3rd episode, and I think 4 people listened to us.
Doesn't matter.
The same amount of people that
if
saw
there
that
had
film.
been more listeners, you would have just been swamped.
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame would have definitely got the same listenership as
a pigeon
as
sat on
a
roof and
Swedish
contemplated
art house movie.
Hey, you know.
That's what all the little like 9-year-old boys in the theater with me were yelling about last night.
Right, Where is this pigeon?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, let's talk about this real quick. Speaking of the movie going experience, Shahir and I went and saw it together along with some friends. It was my
It's Matt's birthday for everyone.
Yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. It was the ability to go see this film on my birthday for whatever reason made it way more emotional than a 37-year-old man now at this point should possibly get about watching a bunch of action figures punch each other. But it happened.
Titanic came out on my 13th birthday, so.
Oh my God! So you know.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah. But Shalyah,
I didn't know yet, but I get it.
Yeah, we had a pretty good theater going experience. I
have to say, not a lot of talking. There was one guy with a cell phone in front of us, which I'm just still like, do you need to check your phone? Because it was clearly he was just checking Twitter for no reason. Like, it wasn't like he had it wasn't like he was a dad who was waiting to see if his wife had gone into labor or something like that. It was literally, I'm just checking Twitter or Instagram right now.
What if he's just literally spoiling the movie as he's watching it?
I was gonna say, if anybody's gonna go see an Avengers movie while their wife's in labor, it's Matt.
That's true.
All right.
That's true. That's 100% correct.
I'll have you know, I didn't go see Infinity War because I was at a lovely wedding of some friends, Alan and Allison.
But you went and saw it as soon as you landed.
As soon as I landed, but I went and I waited.
Which is worse because
if participate in life.
Yes. If the baby had been delivered, you would miss out on the first 3 hours of its life to go see Infinity War, I'm sure.
I'd wait the appropriate amount of time, and then I would go do
what
it.
Disney will give you if you have a baby while watching one of their movies.
Oh, you could become a production baby at the end credits.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Baby.
But
give that kid a head start.
Shalyah, how was your theater going experience where you saw it?
It was lovely. I saw it at a mall theater, which is a fun thing about Los Angeles that New York doesn't really have, which is mall movie theaters.
Yep.
There are way more little kids than I expected. Like not like little, but elementary school kids. Yeah. And the absolute highlight for me, and this is jumping a little into the plot, but not really, but when they go to find Thor and they bring up Thanos, this little kid goes, don't bring that up. And the whole theater lost it.
Oh, not that guy.
No, don't bring that up.
He knows if he was to see Thor.
What time of day did you go, Shalyah?
7 p.m.
Okay, so a respectable time. Yeah, that was my big concern, was that because we were going at like an 8 o'clock screening, and there were a lot of kids in the lobby, but I ended up seeing a 3D version of the film, which I think a lot of parents don't bring their kids to the 3D version because it's too expensive.
So maybe that was a silver lining. Story for the listeners. I actually randomly, the day that I wake up, as we all probably do, and I look at my phone, and the first thing I saw on Twitter was a new Infinity War, like 30 seconds of whatever, and I was like, ooh, Shahir will hate if I watch this. So no, I know. He would hate to watch this. Not that he doesn't give a shit if I watch it. So I watch it, then at the end it's like, tickets available. And I was like, oh. So I casually, at like 7 in the morning, went to Fandango. I was like, I'll order 6 tickets. I'll get some, and I'll figure out who's going later. Boom, done. Everything's good. Cool. And like, I think I looked at some YouTube videos and like fell back asleep for 20 minutes or something. I wake up to every one of my like Marvel friends that I speak to about this stuff every day, freaking out, being like, Fandango's down, the internet's broken, I can't get tickets, da 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 da. And I was like, I literally did it on a whim, and I was so like proud of myself and like this weird sort of thing. But then I was like, maybe I didn't. Maybe it's something messed up, and I don't have these tickets. And so I went back and reviewed it, and only then did I realize that I had purchased 3D tickets.
Yeah. Which is normally for us would be a big no-no.
It would.
But it was fine. I gotta admit, I still am not a fan of seeing movies in 3D.
I am not either.
Neither am I.
And oddly, with Endgame, I think it does a weird thing, which is that it makes the film way more cartoonish because there's a lot of green screen, a lot of space stuff. It makes it all feel cartoony, and oddly, for a movie that's so big in scale, it also makes it feel smaller.
It really does.
I don't know. I can't quite quantify why it does that.
It makes, so for instance, the very beginning of the film, which I loved the opening, but with Hawkeye sort of teaching his daughter about bows and arrows and the picnic, and then they all get snapped. That scene in particular felt incredibly cartoony, and that was probably one of the only practical locations in this entire film. And it was because of is it parallaxing?
It is the parallaxing. I think it's the brightness levels that they have to bump to counteract the 3D, and the sharpness levels, so you can't do depth the same way.
And like everything felt weird. And then when we were in the big sort of CG-ish stuff, I think, and I'm very excited to go see it again in standard def. And Shalyah, you can sort of speak to this as we go. Not standard def, but you know, I want to see it in 4:3 on a CRT monitor. But like, I feel like a lot of the scenes of battle, let's say, might have some more gravitas if it wasn't artificially split to different planes of depth.
Yeah. I mean, having not seen the 3D, I don't know. But I can say in all of my 3D versus regular viewing experiences, I have felt like the 3D made it feel cheaper and weirder.
Yeah. It's almost like that feeling. It's not the same effect, but the feeling of televisions that smooth and like go to 240 hertz and like all that shit.
I will say
I turned the smoothing off on Yo Gabba Gabba.
Oh, good for you.
It made a big difference.
On my recent trip to New Zealand, I went to like 5 different houses where with friends, and they all had the motion smoothing on, and I would freak out at every house, and it was kind of a nice way to extricate myself from having conversations with people because I don't like to talk to people.
It's true.
I would just go and sit in front of the TV and try to figure out
fix
how to
it.
Yeah,
And it does take a long time.
Yeah.
And this is sorry, we're going off on a weird tangent to start, but like when you do that, you are initially like the asshole friend who's like, why? I can see it from the other side being like, why are you fucking with my TV? I think it looks fine. And you're like, no.
It changes everything.
You're watching TV wrong. And if someone walked into my house and was like, hey, you're playing Mortal Kombat 11 wrong, I'd be like, fuck you. Anyway. What was that?
We gotta focus.
I know.
We gotta focus.
Shalyah, I'm so sorry.
so much energy a lot of energy in the room right now.
Okay,
Look, we're all excited, but we got shit to
we
talk
have shit
about.
to do, and I'm so sorry it's taken this long to now get to actual spoilers. I guess we'll do sort of first thoughts, and Shalyah, you being our marvelous guest, no pun intended, I would really like to hear sort of you like walking out of the theater, initial reactions. What were your highs and lows? Oh, what?
Do you want to IMDb? Just so people know.
That's right. We did get called out because we didn't IMDb last time, so I will read the IMDb thing and then.
In case anyone doesn't know what Avengers Endgame is.
Yeah, just in case. IMDb credits Avengers Endgame as the following. After the devastating events of Avengers Infinity War 2018, the universe is in ruins. Debatable. With the help of remaining allies, the Avengers assemble once more in order to undo Thanos' actions and restore order to the universe.
Ooh.
Sends chills down the spine.
I know. So, interesting fact there. The universe does have order while after Thanos has snapped it. It's just not the order they want.
Yeah. Okay, this is jumping from the initial question of how I felt coming out of the theater. Should I do that first and then tell you?
100%.
Great. Okay. So, coming out of the theater, I cried so many times in so many different ways, and a lot of clapping and laughing, and I left very emotionally exhausted and happy because my main concern. And I think we have some similar things that we've thrown around as possibilities of what could happen. And I was just like, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong about all my guesses. Sure. Because if I could think of it, it's not good enough. Because I don't write superhero movies. I was like, if I thought of it, it's not going to be good enough for me. So I want to be wrong all around. And even the things that were like, oh, yeah, we could see that coming. They managed to make enough twists and turns and payoffs that I felt good about.
Yeah.
So I left really happy.
Good.
And also jacked on adrenaline and emotions.
Emotionalin.
Emotionalin. Oh, that's like my blood?
Yeah, sure.
That's what my blood is made of.
Yeah. Shahir, what about you, buddy?
I have a lot of thoughts on this movie.
But like when you walked out, like we're gonna get to all your thoughts.
Yeah.
But like when we all walked out of the theater, how were you feel? Like what was your initial like?
So for listeners who know, I've always been a little bit probably on the cooler side when it comes to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of like my feelings towards it.
Right, not that you're like the Fonz, the jukebox.
Hey. And I kind of. And an interesting thing that happened for this particular movie, which I think is the first time this has happened, which is I didn't see Captain Marvel before this movie. So this is my first introduction to Captain Marvel as well. I generally, if we're just going to do just sort of general impressions, I think I was okay with the movie. I liked it. I think it does close out many chapters of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in strong ways. I think it resolves a lot of stories. I think my initial hesitations when the phrase time travel was introduced were kind of assuaged by the fact that it takes its time to kind of deal with that, even though, like the movie Looper, if you think about it too long, it'll probably break the experience. Sure. I generally thought the movie worked, and I generally thought it was a good experience. And the most important thing is that I was really thrilled to be in an audience with people who were getting excited about moments on screen. They were genuinely engaged. When characters appeared and disappeared, people were clapping. I think I loved just being around that environment. Sure. I think that was really powerful for me.
Fun fact about that, we went with another friend, our friend Tanya, and Tanya had the question. This is sort of an interesting thing to bring up. She's like, she loved the movie, but she was questioning. She's like, I don't get why people clap. Right. I
love Tanya so much. And it's worth mentioning Tanya was my roommate.
Yes, that is true. And Tanya is one of the most how do I put it? And she's actually been on the podcast briefly for some of the specials we've done, like around Christmas or New Year's time. She's been one of the voices about like year in review stuff, so you can check those out on the older episodes. But she is one of the most, I will say this, the most aggressively positive people, but in the least annoying way possible.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I've never been annoyed with Tanya loving life. Like I've been around other people that are like too positive, and it's almost like you don't believe them. I believe Tanya is 100% on board with everything.
Yeah. Well, because Tanya is like the American dream. So you're like, you deserve to be excited. Look what you're doing with your life. Like,
but it was
she's earned it.
Because she too mentioned, and I hope I'm not blowing up her spot, that she cried a bunch in the film as well. But she couldn't get behind the idea.
She didn't know why.
Yeah. But she couldn't get behind the idea of people clapping. And the best way that I could try to get across, and I'm not even sure if it makes sense, is the reaction to clapping at the theater, for instance. You're doing it to show appreciation to actual people that can hear you. And that is a very like, I'm giving this to you, like performer sort of thing. Yeah. I don't think that's what happens when an excited audience claps at one of these movies. I think it is more akin to the act of crying, because even when you cry at a play, you're not doing that so the performer can see it. It's an emotional response you're having. Yeah. And if a piece of art can make you do that, knowing full well that it is not for anyone but you and maybe the rest of the audience, I think that's a really powerful sort of emotional reaction.
I think for our listeners, I'd be really curious, international listeners as well, because that is something that I didn't really experience until I came to America.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm curious if it's sort of... I think it wouldn't surprise me if it happened all over the world when it comes to this particular film. So I'd be really curious if our listeners, especially international listeners, had the similar experience where people were clapping and applauding and almost in a way talking to the movie.
Yeah. Americans are just emotionally starved, and we can only get our interaction from screen time
exactly.
from the biggest corporation on the planet.
Yeah. Now I will say I used to be like, why are people clapping? But if something means enough to me, I do it without thinking about it. And I think it's because like even little kids, like you're like, you did it. Yeah. And like you clap because something worked out well. Or like people, you can be watching like football on TV and people clap for that. Like it's a natural, it's what we have been taught is what you do when something goes the way you wanted it to. Yeah. Right. And so you just kind of do it. And then you're like, well, no one cares, but oh well, clap. Like, yeah.
So, Matt, this is obviously, I think the most important thing here is that I'm interested in your reaction to this film, because you have the most vested interest in this entire cinematic universe in the last, 11 years of cinema. Yeah. This was your birthday. This was the culmination of 22 films.
It was a big moment.
It was a big moment for you. I'm glad I wasn't sitting next to you, like, because I tend to be pretty quiet during these things, and I was sitting next to another one of our friends from Oscar Watch Podcast, and I was just... And he was like engaged, talking. He was like, "Oh, this is happening," and I would just sit there silently. And I was like, "Oh man, I'm glad I'm not sitting next to Matt right now, because I know he would probably just hate this."
Well, no. I mean, I clapped and I cried, but I don't.
No, you would hate sitting next to me during the movie,
right? Because you would just be stone faced.
Yeah.
The spoiler alert for my emotional resonance with this film is that it 100% worked for me. I will say there's issues I do take with it, but there's issues I think I take with almost every one of these films. But the fact of the matter is, like, Shalyah, to your point, even walking into the theater, I had tried not to come up with my own theories beyond sort of what we've all talked about here on the podcast. Like, I know people that actively like watched theory videos and like tried to figure out what was going on. And I was like, it's almost like, to your point too, Shahir, I watched the trailers, and I think the trailers did a very good job at not giving away exactly what was going to happen. There were hints, like, for instance, I figured a time travel element would happen because Natasha's hair changed colors. And there was different stages of like growth out from the white to the red.
Yeah.
But I thought, honestly, like, even though I tried not to hypothesize, I was like, oh, they're going to go back and get their younger selves to help them or something weird like that. And I was so glad that, like, that didn't happen. And I was glad that I was able to sort of, like, distance myself enough from the what ifs where things felt legitimately surprising. And if not surprising, only times, like, things were telegraphed in the films that I knew from the comics, which felt like an initial sort of lizard brain scratch payoff. For instance, Captain America with the hammer. The second I saw the hammer move when Thor was pinned, I know it was set up like Thor was calling it, but I knew that it was actually Cap doing it. And
I cried.
Yeah. Oh, and that sequence is beautiful.
Yeah.
I walked out of that theater. And it's weird because I honestly haven't had a ton of time to process this. I have, obviously, as everyone knows, more emotional resonance with this particular franchise. That's a dirty sentence I just said. Than honestly anything else on the planet, and any sort of media or art form. And to have what I would consider not only a wonderful ending to it, but a interesting enough jumping off point for what comes next without doing a cliffhanger dangly thing at the end, which these things all do to this point. This and this is sort of jumping way ahead, but there's no after credit sequence.
Yeah.
And there's only the sound, actually, at the very end, you hear the sound of Tony Stark hammering something in the original Iron Man 1 in the cave. And I was like, oh, you fucks, you did it. You made this special and final. And I don't know of a world where I could have been more happy overall. Again, I will always find something to nitpick because that's what.
Oh, sure. Do. That's how you love something.
Yes.
If you can't find fault in something, do you really love it?
Fair. So yeah, I mean that's where I stand with this.
I'm single. I don't know.
No. That is 100% true.
You're supposed to hate people, right?
You're supposed to hate people at least 10% all the time.
Okay, good.
Like we know the rules.
Yeah.
But I was even though with the pedigree that I've loved so much, I was legitimately worried going into this film. And I don't think it ever dropped a plate. I think that it was spinning. I think it chose wisely to put certain plates down, knowing that, and I think a lot of that probably came from the editing room, to be honest.
Yeah.
We could talk about some of that in a little bit. But I think it knew what plates were important and what plates would resonate, and it stuck with those and did the absolute best it could in the situation that it had built itself, which was A-okay enough for me.
Okay. Shalyah, do you want to kind of go into more of your sort of deep dive thoughts on the film before I jump in?
Before Shahir destroys us?
Before I jump in and ruin everyone's day.
I mean, I had some weird emotional reactions that I had to like track.
Okay.
Because some of it was, I was like emotionally reacting to, like payoffs, like Cap getting the hammer, or like, or deaths, or like I had some like normal trackable things. But the biggest like impression, I mean, there's so much going on. There's so much. But like I left like with this very like heavy awareness that the biggest cry I had was not from joy or from sadness it was from sheer jealousy for children right now.
Okay.
I started and I knew they were pandering to me, but when they like lined up all the chicks and were like, we'll clear the path, like I knew they were just shoveling that into my mouth. I sobbed anyway, and then got mad because I'm so jealous of little girls right now that they get all those superheroes. And was like angry crying for a little bit.
You're angry at the
so
kids?
Weird. I'm jealous. I'm just so jealous. They get to have they have superheroes. Like girls have superheroes, and that was a weird thing that like stuck with me. Even like today, I still am like, that's so weird how like I like angry cried from jealousy at children. But like that's a good review. That means I'm like, I loved it, you know? Like, well, because it hit me so hard, and then immediately was like, why didn't I get to do this? Like, why don't I get to play and not be the sidekick or be told to shut up because I'm a girl? Like, why didn't I get to play this?
Yeah.
Like, not in an actor sense, but in a playground sense.
Of course.
You know?
Let's talk about... Oh, sorry.
It hit me... Oh, it hit me in all sorts of ways. So it satisfied me in, like, you know, nerd payoff movie ways, but it also, like, tapped into this weird part of my like, child brain that was like, I want to time travel and watch this when I'm 9.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair.
Well, let's talk about what I've dubbed sort of the lady scene, the one that you're bringing up. Because a lot of people, of course, after seeing the film, I immediately jumped on social media and was trying to just dig up opinions of things, because I'd stayed off it for a little bit. And we had discussions at a bar afterward about that scene in particular. Jamie and I this morning were discussing the pros and cons of it.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated that you had that reaction, Shalyah, because it is like the scene we're discussing. Just if you've seen the movie, you've got to this point, you know the scene we're talking about, because it is thrown in your face hard. It is not, not gently into a pit. It like whips the shovel around and smacks you in the head before knocking you down and pouring it on your face. Like, it is a gorgeous. I would love to see that in not 3D. It is a gorgeous, basically giant hero shot, which the Avengers movies are known for. But this time with all of the female cast, all the surviving female cast, sans Gamora, who is not there, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think one of the reasons why it is, well, there's a couple reasons why I think that moment, it's almost like it works too well and therefore doesn't.
That's not the way I would describe it, but okay.
Okay, well, let's go to you in a second. Only because the action to that point, once the battle has become so heated, is super fast. And that is the first moment where it slows down and it has like a one-liner, "We'll clear the path," and then it's just dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, and you're like, oh, I see what they're doing. This is cool, but I see what you're doing. And like, there's two ways I can look at this. One, this is Marvel saying, we get it, and take a look at the future of what the MCU is. There's another way to look at this, which is, this is pandering, this is what 2019 needs, so we're doing it. Jamie made a great point about when they were thinking about putting women on money, and they're like, well, instead of like one woman, let's like put 5 women on there. Like, and it's that sort of aspect of it. And also Jamie was full of amazing quotes this morning. She's like, when she watched it, she took it as, look at all these amazing opportunities we've missed over the last 11 years. So like, while I don't think the scene works where it is and how it is presented in the film, I am hopeful that it means something bigger, and I don't know if that scene will have... I can't tell you if that scene is... I'll even just boil it down to good or not until a couple years from now and we see what Marvel does. Because if that's just fan service and they just sort of did it for no reason, then it's kind of shitbox. But if they're like presenting and being like, look at the future, dummies, like, then I'm more okay with it.
So my issue with that scene, I think Jamie called it #women as we saw it, is that it's inorganic to the moments that we're in at that particular moment of the film, and that's my problem with it. Is that I think it's a lovely sentiment, and I think it's a lovely shot, and it's a lovely moment. In and of itself, but it comes completely inorganically to where we are in the film. Like, it doesn't quite even make sense why these characters are all standing next to each other or why they would end up standing next to each other. So to have that particular moment just doesn't make sense. And it rings of pandering. It rings of like trying to infuse a scene with a political ideology that doesn't actually... It's a square peg into a round hole. I like the square peg. I think it's a good square peg, and it's a much needed square peg. But the comparison that I thought about when I saw that scene was the "I Am No Man" scene by Eowyn in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
See, that's a much
that makes
that's a
sob.
Yeah, but that's a much more organic moment to that scene, and so you don't ever feel like you're being pandered to. You feel like, wow, this is an incredible, revelation within this greater context to like zero in on this moment. And the problem with I'm going to call it #women is that it doesn't come organically to what's happening in front of us, and therefore it doesn't work.
And you brought up an interesting point too. Just from I think maybe at first I was like, oh, it's because it's the first slowdown moment, and now actually I want to take that back. I don't think that's why it feels inorganic there. I think it feels inorganic there because the giant hero shot is not needed. And by that I mean in the battle. For instance, they are going to clear the way for Captain Marvel. That's the point of them all doing. She's not going to do this alone. But then the action that they show around it after the hero shot is so minor, and Captain Marvel just flies through them all anyway. She doesn't need it, and that might be why I had a bit of an emotional disconnect because like every other time they've done big hero shots in these movies, the first one was the circle in the Avengers, and that was them sort of readying themselves, and from a flow and pacing perspective worked really well. Obviously, there's a little less going on, which if you asked me 6 or 7 years ago that there's less going on in the Battle of New York than where this is going, I would freak out. But then also, even when Joss Whedon's Age of Ultron, the opening sequence, while it is sloppy of them trying to get Hydra, it flies all around and stays with the pace of what's happening.
Yeah, you understand where it's coming in.
And they add a point. Yeah.
The only thing I want to do here is like I know I've been lurking on the internet in terms of like in like men's rights groups because I'm real curious just how they work because I just don't understand the mentality quite a lot, and I don't want to in any way stretch what we're saying about a moment not working to suggesting that the moment shouldn't be there.
No, the moment 100% should be there.
Yeah, and because I know, like, again, just like lurking in those communities and kind of just seeing how they operate, their thinking is, oh, this is such a bias against men kind of thing. That's the way they kind of read it, and that's not at all what we're saying because I think Marvel is taking strides to kind of correct that, and to Shalyah's point as well, which is that it is creating this world in which young women are being able to see themselves on screen. Yeah. I will say this, and this is completely out of left field and has nothing to do with the movie, almost nothing to do with the movie.
Thank God.
When I watched that scene, you know how you got jealous for little girls like being able to like have this moment. The thing I was thinking of, I was starting to, and this will kind of lead into sort of my bigger thoughts about the movie. But I've been trying to evaluate over the last week my disconnect with this whole thing. And one of the things I was I wondered about, I don't think this is the case, but I watched that scene where, people were excited about seeing themselves on screen. And I was like, I don't think in my lifetime I'm going to see a superhero movie with a person that looks like me. I can't imagine a world right now where that's going to happen. And I wondered if that was... I don't think that's exactly the disconnect because that is my experience of movies in general.
Sure.
I very rarely see anyone in movies that looks like me. But I was kind of wondering about that, and I wondered if that was why I don't have the emotional side, because I felt that moment, and this was true because not just I was thinking a lot about Jamie. Because Captain Marvel pops on screen and she has the similar haircut to Jamie, and
she has a Jamie haircut,
which she was very pumped.
But that's the thing. I was like, oh, how powerful is that to kind of see that moment? And you've talked about like looking at you right now. There's certainly an Iron Man styling going on. With
I don't know what you're talking about.
And I was just like, I can't imagine a world right now. There's no plans for it, and I don't see it happening. I don't see a world where in Western cinema, which is where I'm kind of basing my life on, where I will ever see a superhero that looks like me.
Right.
And I was like, and for me, that what that made me sad about was thinking about my son.
Right. It's kind of echoing Shalyah's point for her. About
it's hard. It's a bummer when you're a kid and you're like, all you want to do is play the same game everyone else is playing, and they tell you, no, you aren't allowed to be that.
Right.
Yeah.
We're allowed to be that. You're not allowed to be that.
When I was a kid, because I used to play superheroes in the playground and that sort of thing, I would play the Hulk all the time. And I wonder if that was because the Hulk is race non-conforming. He's green. Yeah. And I sort of had a similar, like I would push my hair down like it. But it would never occur to me to play Spider-Man or Iron Man or Batman. You know, I love those characters, but it would never occur to me to dress up as those characters.
Yeah, I think so. So here's what I'm hoping, and obviously, this is good sort of, unless we have more stuff to talk about, there's lots of other things to talk about too. I'm hoping that a scene like this, whether it works or not, depending on either both story and where it is placed, I think this is one of my mathematical calculations in film where I'm like, it does way more good than harm.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm hopeful that because something like this exists, that eventually other things like seeing superheroes that your son will be able to look at and be like, that's like me, sort of like, I'm hopeful that will exist.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things that Marvel has done in the comics, and granted, I don't think done well, but they're at least trying.
Yeah.
And I imagine that as, hopefully, if we can correct ourselves before the environment goes away in 12 years and we don't kill ourselves and we can actually get a government that physically works, then people will be a little bit more, sounds terrible, but like harmonious, and this kind of stuff will be easier to come by and faster than it has been to this point.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, from a purely, not from a cinematic or plot or storytelling anything perspective, but from a pleasing viewer's perspective, had this movie happened and at no point acknowledged the mass amounts of women they've introduced, I would have been fucking furious.
Yeah.
But the story was about the original group. It's not any of those new people's stories. Yeah. So it would have been a weird waste of time to be like, let's see what Shuri's doing for 5 minutes. Like, I would, but I would also have been mad if they didn't get acknowledged.
Yes. Yeah.
And the men already are part of the story.
Yeah.
Because the original group is all but one male. Yeah. So I think it was like I'd rather be pandered to than ignored.
Yeah, fair.
And so I was like excited they found a way to make sure everyone got in the shot. Because that was one of the things I was mad about at the end of the last one. I was like, there's several women that no one told me if they survived the snap, and I'm gonna fucking riot. Like, I was so, until the posters came out, and then I was like, oh, I guess Shuri's gone. Like, screw you guys. You didn't even tell us. Yeah. But so I think they had to, for a complaining on the internet lady perspective, they needed to give me a shot of all those girls so that I was like, at least I got in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
And they got just as much, it's just that the male characters whose stories are being
concluded,
summed up, are the focus of the film.
Yeah.
So
you're never going to please everybody, and there's no suggestion. Yeah. Again, there's no suggestion here that the complications of that scene are in any way mitigating to the idea that scene should exist.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's just the way it's executed in this particular film.
I'm happier having it be a weird sort of janky, like, oh, this feels forced, than having it be like, hey, I just watched that whole movie and never saw like 5 characters.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather see them do stuff. Plus, I like when Scarlet Witch gets mad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
a fan.
There was a great moment where when she comes back after the big battle, and she like monologues at Thanos, and Thanos doesn't know who she is, and she's I forget her line, but she's like, I'll teach you, or I'll remind you, or like whatever. And that was a fucking awesome. There were so many. The awesome per minute in this movie for me personally was, I mean, cranked beyond anything I could. But even we've been talking a lot about the end.
Right?
Battle.
Yeah, we have.
This movie itself, honestly, felt like, weirdly, I mean, it's 3 hours and 2 minutes or something, felt like 3 movies for me.
Right. Okay.
The first movie was basically trying and failing to come to terms with the failure in each of the original 6's own way, right? So Natasha's still searching for answers, actively trying to fix things. Cap is helping others move on while also ignoring that he is not moving on.
He's running a support
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Cute.
Thor has straight up just quit and given up on life.
Now, when I said I didn't see myself in this movie, I'm just saying Fat Thor is the closest I got. Yeah. I was like, this is Dad Thor, this is what I'm about. I'm here.
Hulk kind of did a 180, fixed himself, and has kind of taken a celebrity status in a way, sort of like the thing he's probably always craved. So he's one of the only ones that has what I would consider like he's okay with things going on, other than Tony, who literally has his happy ending.
Yeah.
And then finally Hawkeye, who probably has the harshest or the most violent reaction to what happened, his whole family being snapped away and him being left alone. So he decides to try to take control of his own universe by trying to just straight up murder as many criminals as he possibly can.
Batmaning hard.
Yeah.
As anyone who listened to our other ones may remember, I don't really give a shit about Hawkeye, but I cared about him in this movie.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was nice.
So that's sort of the first film.
That comes after obviously their resolution of trying to solve the Infinity War problem by finding Thanos, right?
Yeah.
And kind of resolving the quandary of what had happened at the end of Infinity War, which is, can we snap these people back? And what I liked about this is that we talked a little bit in our Infinity War conversation. There was an article from Film Crit Hulk about the texture of consequence, I think as we called it. And what I liked about here is that when we flash forward 5 years later after, dealing with Thanos, like chopping his head off, I went for the head. The texture of consequence becomes kind of somewhat more tangible. Like we're actually having to deal with a world in which Thanos won.
Yeah.
And where are these characters right now because of it? I will say, for me, the interesting thing here is that, and I'm not sure it's quite acknowledged in this sequence, but like the world seems okay. And for Tony in particular, the world seems great. And I think I wanted the negotiation of like, should we go back or should we try and restore the way the order, like you described in the IMDb, that they're fighting against the New World Order or something like that, or fighting against the New World, is that to me the tension seemed to dissipate a little bit because we didn't quite see the terribleness of the world other than through Hawkeye's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, the only two that are ended up good are Hulk and Tony.
Yeah.
So the others have a bit of a terrible. Now, granted, Hawkeye's is the most terrible.
Yeah.
But everyone else is in pain in their own ways. Something I liked. This is sort of as we'll get into what I think the second movie is once the time travel thing sort of comes into play. Because I loved that they just took care of Thanos in the beginning and then they had to deal with still losing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kept thinking about, because they're talking about the like how the world has been just ravaged by this, and I just kept thinking about like the initial shock of all those people being gone, and like planes falling out of the sky and cars crashing. Like the initial shock is a horrifying event, but then I kept thinking it's like, individually, to deal with this, it's dealing with a death or a couple deaths. And it's so each person, like people do deal with that in real life all the time. People's families die all the time. So it is something that is everyone has to figure out how to cope with. Yeah. And so I liked that they just showed individuals coping with it and not the grander scale, because that's all it would be. Yeah. Like the world can still exist just fine with less people. The interesting until very recently. Yeah. So it really comes down to individuals coping with loss and how they cope with loss. But also, I really wanted like a bunch of people in all white to walk by as like a leftovers nod.
Yeah, really. I was like, it should be called Avengers Leftovers.
Avengers Leftovers. So
I wanted that to just like in the background.
Smokers, the smoking characters.
Yeah. The interesting thing, Shalyah, that you just sort of said too, is like people die all the time, and like the world still moves on, and that's 100% true. The interesting thing that the reason like why I think it works so well to show individual people's experiences is all like, for instance, as one of the Russos, as the person talking about going on a date after all this, and like how that just is insanely difficult on their own. The strengths of things like that is actually also a bit of a weakness, because the world would not, it's not only just that people are dead. It's not that half of the world was killed. They have disappeared, and no one knows So it's weird. Death happens, and we all have religion, and we all have things where we like. I've had time to figure out like, oh, like maybe this happens, or we have our own religion or our own structure, or whatever. This is something where it's like, no, an alien snapped his fingers, and now everyone's gone. So not only do we have to deal with the fact that half of life is gone, but you have to deal with the fact that everything you've thought in your entire existence is wrong.
Big existential crisis.
And that itself would be more detrimental to society, I think, than the actual individuals. Like, you have the grief of your individual loss, and then you have the destruction of your mental, the way you think the world works.
Yeah.
Like, we understand, at least to a point, some of us more than others, depending on our situations, how death death is a permanent in our existence. This is something where it's like, oh God. So, anyway, I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
What about the people? It's been 5 years. Like, what if people have like moved on and gotten their lives back together and everything's great, and then all the dead people are back and they're like, "Oh, I got remarried."
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be tons of that. No question.
So like
basically the end is Castaway.
Yeah. Like, is it that kind to bring everybody back?
I mean, and that's where I think the existential nightmare would have been really interesting to sort of focus it on Tony. Now, Tony kind of makes a gambit here where he says, and essentially this is kind of where I think the film is sort of having its cake and eating it too, which is it's dealing with consequence. And Tony basically has this amazing life, and then the gambit in order to get everyone back means that he doesn't have to lose that life. Like he kind of says, well, we're going to do it this way so that therefore, I'm not going to lose this life that I've created now.
But he does lose it.
That's a later thing. But I think the interesting thing would have been to have him because especially when the thing that sort of didn't ring true to me was when Pepper Potts kind of says, okay, well, we're going to go out. You're going to have to go do this because I've tried so hard to kind of keep you, to stop you from doing things. But I think she has this like incredibly, new vested interest in this new world, in this new world order. And I don't think there's anyone fighting to like sort of talk about, hey, like Shalyah, what you're just saying, which is that people may have gone on and created new lives. And, it's 5 years later. And again, it's just that I think I was sort of wondering if there was more opportunity to kind of like make the decision to do the time travel heist be a slightly more challenging decision for all the characters. Like, it seemed very much like, okay, we're going to do this. There's a little bit of a sort of pushback from Tony, but Tony, again, and the film, I think, kind of gets to have its cake and eat it too, which is have the texture of consequence, but then wind back time without having to like wind back time.
Right. I think that we'll get to what the consequence I think was sort of later. But what I really liked about especially the Pepper Potts scene is that scene when they're talking after he sort of figures it out and is sort of talking through like whether or not he should just bury it and move on or whatever. And she has Tony Stark's arc throughout all of these films has gone from the most selfish to now the most selfless. Now, he knows, for instance, that he won't actively do a thing to harm his daughter or his new life. But he knows he might not come back. And he also knows that his happiness in this point, this is something that Tony Stark would have never done before. He's grown to this point. He is willing to sacrifice the possibility of his own personal happiness and aliveliness to get back everything that everyone else has lost. And Tony, from the very beginning, he grows, he becomes an altruistic character slowly but surely, like on smaller scales. Like, he doesn't want to make weapons anymore in the first Iron Man, but he's still living off of all the weapons money. Like, there's sort of like the cycles of Tony Stark is very interesting. And here he is literally having his happy ending. And he knows that the right thing to do is to not just let himself and his family be happy, but let the most people that are not him be happy.
Right.
And that's something that I thought you were 100% right, Shahir, about like the cake and eating it too, up until the end of the film, because Tony Stark. The flip side,
I'm still kind of the ending, whether the film gets to eat its cake as well.
The film might, but Tony doesn't.
Yeah.
Tony's hand is also forced, though. I mean, jumping. We're just doing whatever we want.
Yeah.
But like, he's done everything he can to preserve the new reality that exists. But then things go awry, and that reality is in danger. Like, it's not, oh, can we bring everyone back? It's there are like weird ass alien wolf things on the same planet as his daughter in the same time. So like he's got to, the choice is taken away from him.
The one question I would have about the thing, Matt, you just said was that I don't think Tony knows at the point that he makes the decision to kind of enact the time travel heist that it will result in his death.
He doesn't know that it will result in his death, but he knows that it's the possibility of his death is there.
I think so, but I think towards the end of the film, the realization that that the one ending that Doctor Strange saw is his death. I don't think he knows that.
He doesn't know it at that point.
Yeah, and I think his gambit here is that I can have all of this.
Yes, but he also realizes that the thing is, he, for himself personally, has everything he wants, and he's willing to give that up for the possibility of losing that to help everyone else get that. Right. And that's something that is such a great final arc for this character that I was on board with that 100%. Now, granted, let's talk about some things I don't like at this sort of point.
Okay.
I think the Cap and Tony, even though it's been 5 years later, Cap and Tony's sort of resolution, especially after Civil War, and how it was like super ominous in Infinity War, though they were never in the same scenes together. I really wanted a more of a catharsis moment with those characters. I think the film actually weirdly handled their relationship together in a realistic way. Like, I think 5 years and a giant tragedy does a lot to be like, well, I'm like mad at you, but it doesn't matter, so we're cool. Like, that's more of what would happen in real life. I personally wanted that like bro out moment between the two of them, like catharsis, sort of whatever. But that's like me wanting frosting.
I think I saw those two moments. And oddly, this is weird coming from me, but I saw like kind of a nice resolution to those two moments. The first being when Tony comes back from space and he's all emaciated, and they basically rehash the issue of Age of Ultron, which is like, I wanted to put a protective layer around the planet, and you guys said no, that would affect our privacy, and so that battle kind of comes back. But then when they're traveling through time, you realize that these two characters have a shared history when they both decide to go back to 1970, and I kind of saw that as a moment where they kind of, and Tony says to Cap, "Do you trust me?" And Cap looks at him and says, "I do." And it was like, this is weird for me being able to call back on like narrative straight.
Yeah, this is odd for you.
Yeah, from like a long time ago. But I was like, oh, I like these moments feel organic and they feel true to what's come before, and I kind of I bought those moments kind of as the conflict and resolution of the Cap Tony timeline.
Shalyah, I just want your opinion on this. Did I just say something I didn't particularly enjoy in a Marvel movie? And Shahir said something that he enjoyed.
I didn't say I enjoyed it. I just said I understood it in the context of the film.
But what I heard
was his favorite part.
Yeah. Your favorite part.
I
love
these movies secretly.
Love it so much. Love it so much.
Shalyah, what do you got?
No, just noises. What's up?
I love noises. I wanted you to tell me what you thought about what I would consider the second film in this movie, The Time Heist.
The Time Heist. Well, first of all, first and foremost, all of the discussion of the rules of time travel based on films was just like my heart. Because that's like, I live my life. I just was saying the other day, like, I'm such a jerk. Like, someone will say like, ooh, maybe it's haunted. And I'm like, did someone die there? Then I don't think it's haunted. Like, I follow movie rules like they're real rules all the time. Like, I'll correct people about how zombies work. Like, I do that. So I loved having them all break down like what the rules are and then be like, what are you talking about? That's all made up. Like, those are movies. We're basing this on Back to the Future. And then like, Back to the Future lied. Like, I really loved that stuff. I kind of, at first, when Thanos talked about reducing the Infinity Stones down to an atomic level, was like, oh, they're going to get tiny and go find little bits of the Infinity Stones and make a teeny little snap. Like, I thought maybe that was what was happening, but then that did not happen. And then once they were like time travel, I was like, okay. But once I realized what they were doing with the time travel, I was on board. And I had fun, and I loved seeing I love this in Harry Potter too. Like I love seeing stuff you've already seen happen from a different angle.
Yes.
Or like I love seeing the like post Battle of New York cleanup stuff. I enjoyed all of that.
Yeah.
And you get to feel also kind of insidery and cool being like, I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
Like they know what's happening, but I also know what's happening. So like I can help them navigate mentally. So I got pretty into the time travel stuff in a way that I didn't think I would. Because I enjoyed getting to see the flashbacks to other movies. Like it felt very complete from a fan perspective to get to like walk through it all.
Yeah. This is one of those few times I think where, you know, we kind of use the term fan service in a derogatory fashion often. And for a lot of times,
fan love letter.
Yeah. Like a lot of times I think it should be used in a derogatory term. The time heist, the entire thing about the time heist is it is all fan service, but it is, how do I put it? I mean, the love letter is a good way to put it too, Shalyah. It's because the fan service is literally the plot. It makes it like it goes a step beyond just being like, remember this,
Yeah.
Like it's dedicating the time, and it gave time travel the weight. I feel like it deserves. It wasn't just like the movie built up a lot to them like testing it and getting ready, and it took its time. It didn't just jump from 5 minutes. Tony figures out a model with a Mobius strip, and then they're in their suits. Like there's some breathability there. I too loved the moment of like talking through the movie stuff. I do think, and I do need to watch it again, and I need to read more stuff about it. I think the rules that the film set up about this film's time travel, it stuck to.
Yes.
I people have brought up certain things, and so far I've been able to do the mental gymnastics to get away from any of the like it broke its own rules conversations. We'll see if that holds up. But the moment, same thing. I loved seeing the cleanup of the Battle of New York. There was a couple great comic book nods when Cap's in the elevator with everybody, a la the Civil War scene, and he leans in and he knows that they're Hydra, but they don't know that he knows at this point, and he says, "Hail Hydra." That's a nod to the Secret War arc that was kind of universally panned, or I forget, Secret Agent or whatever it is in the comics, where Captain America was a Hydran agent all along. But what the Marvel Cinematic Universe seems to do is if there's a shitty arc in the comics, they take the 5% that's genius and they just take that little part and they put it in the movie, and even if it's in a throwaway line or whatever, that's great. But so this stuff I never, up until the ScarJo moment, I never there was like 40 minutes of this film where I was like, everything's consequence free, and I was okay with it. Shahir, what about you? And then we'll sort of talk about ScarJo.
The time travel thing is sort of interesting because they basically, the fundamental thing about time travel as we know it through movies like Back to the Future, Terminator 2, yada, 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 is that there is a sense that the grandfather paradox, or the temporal paradox, which is that if you go back in time and you change something, it creates a butterfly effect, which means that the origin that you jumped from no longer exists. And what this movie is playing with is this idea of the quantum realms where multiple possibilities are true. Doesn't make it any less confusing how it's going to work, because ultimately what happens in this film is opposed to the grandfather paradox, which is that Thanos now in the rational linearity of the story no longer snaps people. He just arrives in the future and is post-snap. But now what the film is positing, and again, this, just bear with me if this all sounds funny, is that because this is a question that came in later, which is the question I believe one of our listeners came up with, is the fact that the film defies the temporal paradox, which is that if Thanos is brought before the time that he snapped into the future and then is killed, therefore the snap never happened. So therefore the paradox here is this reality can no longer exist. That's a logical linearity to time travel, which is the foundation of the temporal paradox. What the film is playing with is the quantum theory of time travel, which is that multiple realities can exist at the same time, and that Thanos's future snap is actually part of an infinite loop that is part of a single timeline. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. And they sort of and rightly so, the film washes it away with quantum mechanics. Like I studied quantum. I know about quantum just to sound smart. Basically, is what they're saying, and that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge of quantum mechanics and realities. It's the idea that the world doesn't exist in a single binary; it can be multiple binaries at once. And I think for the most part it works. Now, going back narratively, this was my biggest dread about Infinity War.
Okay,
the biggest dread about Infinity War was, again, and it has to do with the texture of consequence.
Do you mean Endgame?
No, with Infinity War.
Oh, sorry.
It was my biggest fear about when I saw Infinity War is that, I said then, whoa, they killed off half the characters. They killed off all these amazing characters. And I was like, that takes a lot of chutzpah, and it's pretty bold, and I'm very impressed that they did it. What will really piss me off at this moment is if they unwind that. Because then what they're saying, essentially the film, the world is basically saying is that we didn't really mean to do that. Like, rest assured the world will continue as it exists, and there's not much consequence to the world.
Yeah.
I think that, oddly, what helps in this case is the duration of the film, the 3 hours, and basically making the mechanics of that time travel thing kind of play out for a long period of time, to the point where, again, as you're watching it, it doesn't quite line up, because again it's not based on like our Back to the Future knowledge, and I don't quite understand how returning the time stones back to their original point will reform the timeline.
I do, but that's okay.
I do.
but as you watch, as long as you kind of like, I've always said this thing about movies as well, is like, go with it. Like, go with it and just see if by the end of it doesn't kind of make sense, then there's a problem. But if you go with it and kind of just absorb it as it's happening, I think it kind of works. But this is sort of the film having its cake and eating it too, but it's doing a good job. It's a tasty cake.
Yeah. Time travel in film, unless your entire film is about the concept of time travel, will always feel hand-wavy. And that's okay. I think that they did a really great job here with I loved that the Ancient One comes back, Tilda Swinton, what up? And it has a conversation with Bruce Banner and and they have the very graphic design thing of like timelines and like, you'll be fine, but ours is shit. Like, I mean, the idea behind
it back,
yeah.
The interesting thing here is, it's the infinite universes sort of theory, in the sense of the easiest way that I can break it down, and this is not a correct way, but it is a simplified way of how I think the mechanics, at least how the film is saying that it works, is every character's, if a character goes to their past, that is still the character's future.
Yeah, it's part of the linearity of their life.
So, but it could also, you could look at that as it's sort of splintering into infinite numbers of realities, but if we want to make it simple, let's just make a reality per character, right? I mean, that's not what the film does, but like, let's take that concept and boil it down to just sort of being like that.
I think what it's saying is more that reality is linear, whether you
go back in
whether you
time
travel or not. There's no splitting off. It's all part of the same reality.
Sure, yeah.
Well, what was I going to say? The interesting thing about the time travel stuff, and like what you said before and what you were worried about, is that there would be no consequence, that they would snap these people back and whatever. I never thought that the snap, and I don't think you did either, any of us, that they were going to, I mean, we knew the movies coming out later, Black Panther 2, Spider-Man Far From Home. Like, we know that they're coming back, but it's how they come back, and does it matter that they were gone, and is the world different because of that, even after they fix it? And I think they did that, I mean, with the... I mean, let's kind of going down the line. I mean, 3 of the original Avengers are gone now. One way or another, they are gone. That's half the team gone. Not to mention, you want to talk Vision, you want to talk original Gamora, which I didn't even think of this for Gamora, and I never wanted to lose Gamora from the Guardians franchises, but I never wanted her to come back either. Like, I didn't want that to be okay. And now that she's back, but not back, like, it's not her. It's previous her, and now she has no relationship with the Guardians whatsoever. So Quill...
But did she get to stay around, or did she get... when
we don't know.
She was there with the... Because they didn't really show her again.
No, they didn't.
Well, see, this is the thing, and this is what sort of... is there a Black Widow TV show?
There's supposed to be a Black Widow film.
Right, right. Kate Shortland's directing it, who's a really, really fantastic.
That could be like in the 80s or something.
Could be in the 80s, whatever. But basically, the fact that Gamora comes back doesn't bode well for the sort of texture of consequence for Black Widow's death. in this film.
I hope they don't bring Black Widow back the same way. Black Widow, even though I want to see her film, should stay dead.
My point here is, on paper, all of this is terrible. Right? You know what I mean? On paper, this is like...
So is The Notebook. You know what I mean?
On paper, all of this is terrible storytelling. And on paper, it's like such a manipulation of an audience's emotion. In the experience... I think it all works.
Yeah, I mean, what is theater or film except lying to people in the dark for money?
Suspension of disbelief, and...
Yes.
Sorry, before we get distracted from, like, splitting off into timelines, string theory, all that stuff, I just want to publicly say that my theory for where they're going to set the Loki Disney Plus show is in the new timeline that starts in wherever he was when he took the Tesseract.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
I mean, he
because
disappeared.
they're not going to pay to anti-age him and make it a pre-story. Maybe he's too old for that.
The other
My
thing
husband is an adult. He can't play a teen.
Tom Hiddleston,
Yes,
please,
my
please
husband,
email
Tom
us.
Hiddleston.
Shalyah is waiting for your
Very-
proposal.
Here's the thing that's a bummer, though, is one of my friends is dating one of the Avengers, so it's like...
Oh, so you're 1 degree of separation.
You're 1 degree away.
So like, come on.
Yeah.
Hook a sad girl
at least get someone on the team.
on. Any will do. I'll take just not Jeremy Renner.
Why?
Here's why I think. Oh, what's wrong with Jeremy?
What's wrong with Jeremy Renner?
Yeah.
Sorry, he's fine. I just don't want to date him.
Oh, really? You didn't like his mohawk? His.
I'm way more into weird hybrid Hulk Mark Ruffalo. You could climb that guy.
I think, again, this all kind of, I think for me, where narrative textures of consequence kind of fails on paper, what does work in the moment to moment is whether the scenes are emotionally resonant and whether the return of these characters is actually earned throughout the course of the film. And I think it is. Again, sitting in the audience, hearing people clap when characters come back. Now, I don't know if that has to do with just the sheer affection we've generated for these characters over time. But here, just being there and feeling that experience kind of in the theater, I think makes it land. Even as much as I kind of think on paper, it's sort of, and ultimately the cynical part of all of this is that this story is not over. It's all going to continue. This is a perpetual money machine that's going to keep going.
Yeah.
And actually kind of part of the research I did for this episode has nothing to do with the movie itself or the mythology of the Marvel. It has to do with Disney.
Yeah. Real quick, just sort of going to the theater experience and whatever. Before I was on my way to therapy Thursday morning, and I looked over on the subway, and I saw on someone's phone the scene from the very beginning of this film, it was Carol Danvers talking to the whole team, like that hologram scene, and I was like, he's watching Endgame on his phone, and I looked away. But I was like, and I was thinking about it, I was like, yes, this is what Marvel wanted. Marvel wanted you to experience the end of their grand 11-year experiment on a crowded subway that smells like farts and there's Showtime going on in the background. Like, and I was like, who? Like, maybe that's saying that Marvel doesn't give a shit as long as you pay them. But like,
that guy did not.
To be that person watching, no. But watching that, like, this is how he wants to experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we had this conversation about Steven Spielberg sort of ratting out Netflix for their erosion of the cinematic experience, and our kind of counteract to that is that people experience things the way they experience things. And
I judged hard. Though.
You judged hard,
which is fine. People can do whatever they want. It's free will-ish, but
Okay, so time travel is what it is.
Yeah.
And
sorry, one more thing. It's not about the time travel, but there was something that I really respected about, I guess, this section of the film. And that was not so much the time travel itself, but the way that 2014 Thanos discovers what's going on.
Right.
And now, look, the time travel stuff, we don't know how time works really, but we have all these theories in real life. Something that we do know, however, is quantum entanglement, that is a real phenomenon. And now, a lot of the MacGuffins in Marvel movies have to do with magic space rocks, and whenever they can't explain something, that's the cause. the idea that how Gamora's network works, Nebula's network works, and how there's sort of two of them at this point, and now that creates a quantum entanglement. We've proven that you can transfer and adjust data via quantum entanglement from any point to any point in real life. So
you two?
Me and Shalyah did
we
it.
did.
Yeah,
we did the experiments in our own lab.
Gig. Yeah,
you should tell people in a more public forum.
Listen, Shalyah, we're just trying to keep that on the down low right now. You know, it's basically
your secret safe with me.
We're having the Tony Pepper discussion right after this podcast to see if it's worth letting the world know.
Spoiler: I'm Pepper.
Oh,
am I your baby?
Yeah.
I just want cheeseburgers.
Yeah. But like, I really enjoyed.
Burger, kid.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that was like, out of all this fantastical stuff, they found like a thing that is both science fact and science fiction to make the way that Thanos, like, it was just a small thing, but like, I really appreciated that they took the second to sort of, even with the throwaway line of sort of like her memories are quantum entangled or whatever, and I was like, oh, like it was. It's those type of small moments that actually, I think, help the stuff that you said truthfully on paper is ridiculous and does not work. I think it helps work. Anyway, that was my last time heist, as Ant-Man quoted it.
Were we going to talk about Black Widow?
Oh, yeah, we should talk about that, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Shalyah, what are your thoughts on the soul swap for Black Widow?
I think that based on everything we've ever been told from like Black Widow's mouth, like about her view of the world, of her own life, I think it was the kind of death she wanted. She needed. Because she is, no matter how much good she does, is always talking about there's red on her ledger. Like, she feels an overwhelming sense of guilt for what she has done, and a sense of like owing her life to Hawkeye. Like, that doesn't matter what she does, how much she does, she feels that. And she's spent so much time then at this point obsessing over how she can fix things and trying to keep things going, that I think, I don't know, I was okay. I understand. Like, it is a bummer. As I was leaving, my friend and I were like, why didn't she get her own funeral?
I mentioned that as well.
Where was her funeral?
Yeah.
But like, they were mid doing stuff, and I'm sure they gave her own funeral. But like, realistically, Black Widow has never gotten treated like the other ones.
Yeah.
She and Hawkeye have been separate, always. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that they didn't give her like a big service. But I do at least think that like that's a death that would mean something to her if she wasn't dead.
Yeah. Well, there's a great moment in the end at Tony's funeral where I think it's Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch are by the lake, and he's like, I wish we could let her know that
she knows.
She didn't matter.
If she wasn't dead, as Shalyah said, she knew.
Yeah. I think if she got to watch her own death, she'd be like, good for me.
Yeah.
If the movie did like that moment from Scream where they pull back and Scarlett Johansson was watching in the theater, I think it works, right? Is that what you're saying? But here's the thing for me is that, I can see in the Tony debate about whether he should do this, I can see the possibility of there being two correct outcomes of that conversation. You know, whether he should like be involved in time heist, because his dilemma is, if I get involved in the time heist, I might lose my family, right? But if I don't get involved in the time heist, you know, like there's the all these people who have lost so much.
Yeah.
In the dilemma between Hawkeye and Black Widow as to who should be lost, the answer is so clear cut to me that I was like, every time they were like fighting about it, I was like, guys, Black Widow needs to go. Like it's the film,
based on what?
Based on the fact that the entire purpose of this is for Hawkeye to regain his family. Like, Hawkeye has something to come back for. Black Widow, according to the scenes that we've seen where she's just sitting around like in this post-Thanos world, has nothing to come back for. So it was like, there's no, like, to me, I was watching that going, guys, I understand we're trying to be honorable here, but in terms of like who's got the most reason to live and who has the least reason to live, the dilemma is really clear.
But I think too,
you have a kid. You think you're better than me?
It's pretty much what I'm saying.
To live. You die. You die.
Here's the thing. I think
throwing you off a cliff.
It felt very honest to both characters. I think Clint doesn't, because Clint feels a lot of the same guilt, especially now after 5 years of fucking murdering people.
Being
That
a psycho.
He just wants his family to be alive. Now, granted, in a perfect world, would he want to be there with his family? But I think, honestly, in these moments, Clint wants his family to be alive and Natasha to be alive. Like, and I think
I can see that.
And I think that's his driving force behind it. And granted, if we want to look at the cold numerology of what's going on, sure. But that's not how emotions work.
It just felt very much like these two were like throwing each other off this cliff, and I was like, guys. You're like, I wanted Red Skull to like just stop and go, look, I've just watched this for the last 5 minutes, and I'm just saying, Black Widow, you need to go.
No, I really liked how it played out. Now, the last thing I will say about this is, honestly, I feel like the gravitas of that scene of her death actually was a little wasted on me, because at that point I had to pee so bad.
You dumbass.
I know. And so I
planned my whole hydration schedule around
I know. But I ran out and I timed it. I was 50 seconds in and out.
What, you peed 50? It took you 50 seconds to go to the bathroom and pee and come back?
Yep.
You know what? I'm guessing you didn't wash your hands, you filthy monster.
No, I did. I ran them through. I didn't dry them. I dried them on my pants.
Did you pee hands free?
Yeah, free. Just freewheeling it.
Pants all the way down to the ankles.
And I came back and
you were arrested.
I missed. And I came back and I basically I left the theater when they just all arrived back via the time machine. Okay. And then I got back right as they got to the point of we cannot bring her back.
Right.
Yeah.
So I missed like connective tissue and stuff, and
it just felt like they were all very certain of that fact, given that like later in the film Gamora comes back, and also that they're in a time travel world. You know, like now I was like, oh, you're very.
I'm
certain
curious
of this.
because I can't speak to that because I didn't see it. I'm very curious
They
about those.
They were just like Hawkeye was just very. It was almost like
the Soul Stone told him.
No, it's almost as though like if no one knew, it was like he murdered her, and he was like, no, guys, we can't go back. I'm serious.
Fun.
Do not go back to the moment when I stabbed her.
Yeah.
Good question. I want a trial for Hawkeye.
Yeah, put him on the stand.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about the time heist before we sort of move on to Act 3, the big battle?
Well, okay, not specifically about time heist, because there's something about Act 3 that I want to talk about that I think is it's really about Act 1, but I think it comes to fruition in Act 3.
Time travel.
Yeah. I've got nothing else about time travel, but let's just rewind the tape and see what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Act 3. Okay. No, the thing I wanted to talk about that I think to me is the most successful storyline in this film is oddly the storyline that feels like it can be a punchline, and that is Fat Thor. And the reason I think Fat Thor is the most successful of these timelines is also oddly it gave me a way to come to terms with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Interesting.
Which is that Thor basically, you know, and this is a repeat of the Tony Stark PTSD kind of dilemma that happens post Avengers. It's the same basic narrative through line, which is that post failing to kill Thanos, Thor has kind of hidden himself away in New Asgard and has become kind of sloth-like playing video games with Korg. Side note: if you're gonna have Korg in the film, you got to have more lines for Korg. I mean, Korg is just everything.
I'm just so happy he survived.
Yeah, it's great. So what I like
about him,
what I actually, there's a couple of things that I love about this is that there's a danger in this sort of body change characterization that we've seen in many movies before, which is that the body change is temporary.
Yeah,
ultimately when these characters get it together, they're going to get back in shape and kind of do what they're going to do. And this film doesn't do that, much to my surprise. You know, and I was like,
he braids his beard.
But the first time I saw Fat Thor, I'm just going to call him Fat Thor, even though that might be dismissive, is that I was like, please don't let him get back in shape by the end of this movie. Because that again is that texture of consequence thing that we've been talking about. And what I liked about it is this line, the sequence that he has with Rene Russo, his mother, where he basically has to come to terms with this idea. You know, she says this line that I really liked, and I think to me allowed me again to kind of deal with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is that she says everyone fails at whatever it is they're trying to be. She says the success of a man is not at your failure, but it's in accepting who you are. And at the end of the film, Thor kind of hands over New Asgard to Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie, and says something along the lines, I've got to stop trying to be stop trying to be who I'm supposed to be, and instead be who I am right now. And to me, that was this sort of beautiful kind of encapsulation of this idea that I've always had a problem with, which is that the Marvel movies are so big. There's so much a big cultural conversation that I've always kind of been like, why aren't they memorable to me? Why aren't they kind of, why aren't they challenging? Why aren't they sort of profoundly affecting or anything like that to me? And I think, that line and that sort of like the way Thor's character ends up, where he kind of moves into this world where he will inevitably, hopefully, stay as large Thor in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, is this sense of like, look, the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole is what it is, and you've just got to kind of go with it at this point. And it's not about like aspiring to something grander or something like that. This is just what it is, and accept it. And I think that was like, to me, that was the most affecting storyline in the film, and it was played doubly well because when Thor kind of takes his place in this final battle scene, he's still Schlubby Lebowski. And I loved that, and I kind of felt that was just such a interesting piece of sensitive storytelling within this grander context.
I'm very happy they didn't make him ripped Thor again. I guarantee you, though, in Guardians 3, when I'm sure he pops up again,
he's using a Bowflex.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. He's using a Bowflex because in Infinity War, but Peter Quill's like, that's it. I'm going to commit. I'm going to get a Bowflex. And I bet you they're going to have a Bowflex, and they're like working out. And that's going to be like some man candy for a minute real quick.
And I guess
which is fine. I think that would be okay.
I guess my point there is it would be amazing if this truly was the end. If this truly was the end, and that's where Thor ended up.
Yeah.
I think that would be a sort of a beautiful place for him. And looking at the trajectory from Thor, the Dark World, to Ragnarok, to this, I think that's a really interesting. I think that is, to me, has been the most surprising and interesting.
Yeah.
There's an article in Vanity Fair by Joanna Robinson about Thor's through line and why this change happened. And she sort of suggests that it kind of came about through Chris Hemsworth basically saying, these Thor 1, Thor 2, Avengers, I'm just a character with no arc.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to do in these films. I'm just this stoic, godlike Viking. And that's why Taika Waititi was brought on. That's why the tone of the whole thing changed. That's where he ended up in Avengers Infinity War. It's just this sort of like, we need to do something with him. And I like that they did.
Also, from purely a personality standpoint, like Chris Hemsworth looks like Thor.
Yeah.
But is one of the funniest actors we have right now. And I'm so glad that people have figured that out.
Yeah.
But there was a sort of like parallel where I'm like, yeah, let him go be in Guardians. Like, he's too funny for the Thor movies.
Yeah.
Like,
he doesn't take himself seriously.
Did for him is give him the chance to shine that way. But like I think as a person, as an actor, he's better used.
Yeah,
that way.
100%.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I will say too, I was wondering what you were going to say about the Thor timeline thing. I just loved the simplicity that he went and talked to his mom, and instead of it being some complicated thing, she's like, "Yeah, I was raised by witches. I get it.
Yeah.
Let's talk, sweetie." I loved that because I was stressed about the time travel rules and like what's going to happen if he talks to her. And I appreciated that they just were like, shut up. We're just going to have a moment. Like,
although the dialogue just towards the end of it, and I'll have to go back and just do a script comparison. I think pretty much they ripped the exact same dialogue from the end of Back to the Future for when he's leaving his mom, and he's like, "Mom, there's something I've got to tell you." It's to me, I was like,
"Oh, it might be the same. It might be
feels
an
like
homage."
the exact same verbiage. It's like, "There's something I've got to tell you," and she's like, "No, you don't need to tell me because my future's already fixed." It's basically Doc Brown and Marty McFly.
Eat a salad.
Yeah.
The thing
the famous Back to the Future line: "Eat a salad."
Eat a salad. Yeah.
Eat a salad, Marty.
Marty, eat a salad.
The thing I really liked too, and obviously the Thor arc, I think, is one of the most surprising and effective throughout the entirety of all of these, is there was a lot of real good mom and dad stuff in this. I mean, I think Rene Russo's scene definitely is more powerful of the two, but Tony with his father working out kind of how to be a father and kind of, in a weird way, teaching his father a little bit about being a like there's something. I thought you would glom onto that hardcore, Shahir, but maybe that didn't affect you quite as much. I thought it was very I like small Tony moments.
Yeah.
And we don't get a ton of them all the time, but when we do,
yeah, I think what it is Tony has been a straight line story for me, and I don't think his PTSD story, even through Avengers Iron Man 3, has ever been that successful for me, because he's kind of always just resolved it, and Confident Tony has always been Confident Tony. So the sort of fatherhood thing didn't play for me as strongly as I think the film wanted to, whereas Thor's narrative, where he really is reduced to a shadow of his former self, like his mannerisms are entirely different, his confidence is entirely out the window, does work for me.
You know what it is? I think here's the difference of the arc. So Iron Man goes from polar opposites of one type of man to another type of man. Thor goes to 3 different types of men. He goes from I'm the shit, I'm a god, haha, in Thor 1 and 2 and whatever, gets brought real low through Infinity War to sort of the opposite end of the confidence spectrum and doesn't believe in himself enough, and then realizes that he actually isn't either of those 2 things, and he's a third completely different type of person. So like, I definitely can see how one of those storylines would resonate with a person more than another. Like,
it just feels like a more complete arc, as opposed to Tony's, which is, he doesn't feel too dissimilar from who he was initially. Like it's subtle.
His motivations are different, but he's the same. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Is there anything else time heisty?
Not time heisty, but then and I feel like I'm hijacking the conversation here. But there was a thing about Captain Marvel, which is I haven't seen Captain Marvel, and
appropriate because she comes in Act 3, really.
Yeah, she's there at the beginning,
in Act 1, but
and she kind of comes in Act 3, and she, because of the way she's utilized in this film, and I have no relationship to that character. There's 2 problems for me. One is that she feels very Deus Ex Machina, like she kind of pops in as needed. The second thing is, I get no sense of who Captain Marvel is in this film for sort of a universe that is very defined by like clear personality and clear personality types. In this film, me having no relationship with Captain Marvel, and this is the only time I've seen her, I had no sense of who she was, what she was about. And I know there's a whole other movie that kind of explains that, and you could make the same argument for Black Panther.
I was just going to say that.
But Black Panther isn't like really a character in this movie, and Captain Marvel is a kind of a major player in this movie.
She's a major player. I wouldn't say she's a major character. I think it was smart what they did with her.
Right, but then her usage kind of feels Deus Ex Machina to me.
Though I felt good about her usage, because if they had used her any more, I was worried they were going to use her even more.
Yeah, right.
Because she is so powerful that it was like, okay, well, are they just going to fix, like, she's just going to do all of it?
Yeah.
But I've talked to several people about this, and I just saw it last night. Brie Larson shot that before she did
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
So
there wasn't a character yet.
Right.
And especially with all the secrecy, like, she probably didn't know who the hell this girl was.
I've watched a lot of interviews with Brie Larson.
She's a warrior. Be a warrior.
She said the script had not been completed yet for Captain Marvel when she came on set, to the point where she said she walked onto set once, and it's all green screen and like whatever, and she's supposed to walk into like, okay, there's 6 people in the room, and your line is, "Where's Fury?"
Yeah. And
then she said to, I think it might have been Fallon or something, she's like, "Oh, well, okay, like that's fine, but like, okay, you can't tell me who's in the room. That's okay. That's not important. But am I asking, like, where's Fury, like, he's in this building? Or where's Fury, like, he's dead? Or, like, she's like, I need more. And so they only gave her like, so much stuff.
I read an interesting article from the actor's point of view of this, where they were talking about how, like, we're such in a world of, like, spoiler secrecy and, like, not revealing too much, where actors aren't even getting the full script, and they're not aware of their full arcs as they're writing, as they're working on the film. And the problem is that kind of robs them of the ability to kind of add nuance.
Yeah,
like if you think about like Pacino in Godfather. He knows, like the actor,
he knew the story.
He knows the exact story, so he can like do a little moment at the beginning that's going to be a suggestive of the moment at the end.
And in this case, we have to trust the script writers and the director to the point to have to direct them in that direction, without the actor knowing that's why they're doing it, and that will never quite be the full.
Yeah,
I can.
There's
see
an
that.
entire acting approach that doesn't work if you don't like that wouldn't which is like emotional like psychological gestures, which is like that you're like building to this like larger gesture psychologically. You can't do that if you don't know the story. You can't do it. So like someone like Jack Nicholson does that, and like he wouldn't be able to function with like, he would have to develop a different acting technique.
Imagine as good as it gets if Jack Nicholson was doing the first few scenes and he's just calling his neighbor like homophobic slurs, and he doesn't know that this is where the film's going to go.
Right?
Here's what I want to say about Captain Marvel, and Shalyah, I want your opinion on this too. I think not only was her usage perfect, I'm a little bit, and I could totally see here from you didn't see the film, so this film doesn't give her a ton of time to develop a character because it's not her story.
But it's not just that. It's just that even like I'm okay with her being in the film as much as she is. Yeah. What I just have difficulty with is that she's got no personality in this film.
But so now that's what I take umbrage with.
Okay.
Good sir. I think that she actually does have personality in this film, but it is a different personality than what we are used to seeing from all of these characters, and it makes her stand out, and I think it can be misconstrued as no personality. Carol Danvers in Captain Marvel, she plays it very subtly. But every other character in this thing is either a big, larger-than-life caricature or a sad sack or a goof, and everyone goofs around. And Carol Danvers is a lot of things, but she is not a goof. And I think when you put a character like that in here, the initial reaction is, oh, she has no character. I honestly think, for especially in both in the meta of knowing they shot this first and then seeing Captain Marvel, and just in the if I didn't know that and Captain Marvel happened first and then they did this, I think she actually is a incredibly subtle but stoic character that is still, for me, interesting while being stoic, and an actual breathing character that I believe is an individual. I could be, it's funny, I was about to say, I could be poisoned because I saw Captain Marvel. But I think the Black Panther analogy is an apt one, where you wouldn't have the emotional arc of Black Panther or any of the Black Panther characters, Okoye, Shuri, anything, if you hadn't seen Black Panther. Even if you watch the first Infinity War, they're there, but you don't care about them as much.
It's not their story.
And I entirely agree with that it's the same reading, but the thing that's different between Captain Marvel and Black Panther in this movie is Captain Marvel is such a big part of this, of how the narrative resolves itself, whereas Black Panther is just there. And so,
but she's really not, though, because they write her. They kind of write her.
She's holding, Thanos' hand at the end of it.
But
battling with
it. They all do that at some point.
But Black Panther doesn't. You know what I mean? Like he
ran with it for a while.
Yeah,
he
ran
with it for a while.
They all did it.
You know what? But she's such a big part of it. She's kind of there at the beginning. It's just all I'm saying is that I don't even get the sense of the stoicism you're talking about. Like I don't even get the sense that she is this stoic, quiet, reserved character. It's all blank slate to me.
Oh, I see that. But what I will say is, I think this is where the success of Captain Marvel and the sort of media cycle of Captain Marvel and Brie Larson might actually poison people's viewing of her character in the film, because the story up until Endgame has been Captain Marvel is the biggest thing ever that has ever been anything. And while I think that is justifiable in my own personal opinion, I think that sets up an unrealistic expectation for her in this film, because this was never her film. And this is the first time that we've sort of had that like bit of a flashback film into this to introduce a character in this timeline. Sorry, Shalyah, you looked like you had a thing.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, it's also the first time any of those characters had ever met her.
Right.
Yeah.
They're like, there's just some flying, glowing blonde from America in space. Like, they didn't, so like, she has no reason to be anything other than business.
Yeah, she's not friends with any of them. Who the hell
are they?
Yeah, she's Nick Fury's friend, and Nick Fury is gone.
Right.
Yeah, they're not friends. She's there because she got a page.
Yeah.
And then no one responded when she called to follow up from a payphone. And but no, so I felt like, especially again, like having seen Captain Marvel, but like her character is very much set up as a guarded person, a warrior, both in any any existence she has had, she's been a warrior and guarded, and is not like a fun, overly friendly person. She's waiting to see what's going on. And she's assessing things. And that can get in the way of a personality, I think.
And I know that this is not what you are saying, Shahir. I can see what you're saying. The issue that I have is not with your opinion of this, but I think with taking that opinion and twisting it to sort of the dark men's rights sort of bit of the thing. I know that's not what you're saying. Yeah. But
I like being a girl right now because no one would ever assume I was giving a men's rights.
Right. But like, to me, I've had a lot of issues with the judgment of Captain Marvel because she is stoic, and again, I
would just like it if she smiled a little bit more.
No. That joke that you just said was literally what I was going to like. The problem that you're having, while I think is justified, can easily be misconstrued by idiots.
Yeah, it's not about smiling. It's about the sense of like,
I understand,
who is this person.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Act 3. Let's get to sort of. We've talked about it a lot, but the final battle here, I thoroughly enjoyed. In the comic books, in the Infinity Gauntlet book, they all go to space and have a big battle on like rubble rocks in the middle of space. And for a comic book, that works great. And when I saw sort of the trailer images of the three walking up to Thanos in a giant rubble pit, I'm like, are they going to have a fucking fight on space rocks in this movie? I'm like, that is dumb as shit. And then I realized, I thought it was a very clever juxtaposition, is once, shit starts hitting the fan and Thanos uses the Pym particles to bring his entire army to the past and all that jazz, and he just unloads on Avengers headquarters and turns it to rubble. And then they're fighting in this giant rubble pit in upstate New York.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a interesting way to make the mechanics of the film make sense in their own rules, and also make it look and feel like the battles that people that are used to the comic books would expect, but now they won't roll their eyes at.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very the MCU is so clever again at taking that 5% of something that works, in this case the aesthetic of where the battle happens, and then moving it from a dumbass place to like a legitimate place that would make sense. The moment when Bruce Banner snaps and brings everyone back, and it makes sense that A, Bruce is the only one that can do it because A, he's the one that's strong enough, and B, he's the one that's smart enough to actually, like, if anyone could pull off the like mental calculations other than Tony and live through it, it's this version of the Hulk.
Fat Thor definitely would have thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man at that moment.
Yeah. So,
just beers. Just everyone turns into beer.
Yeah. And so the moment of everyone coming back and everyone kind of having, like, it starts with Black Panther and Shuri and Okoye walking through it with the sort of like the light behind them was gorgeous. Even the fight beforehand with the big three before that actually happens, and Cap gets the shit kicked out of him, and then I
was like yelling. I was like, Cap, come on, Cap.
There's the beautiful splash page, and this is straight out of the comic, but they made it look good, of Cap versus everyone.
Right.
And that was amazing. The fight itself, here's what I will say about it once it gets rolling. And I need to see it again. I think the 3D really hurt here.
Go see normal.
I will. Well, I'm going to see this movie a couple times. You know this.
Yeah. I wish I didn't have other things to do.
I know. I'm actually trying to work my work schedule this week so I can go to a matinee at an RPX theater. But I digress. The fight itself, it all kind of washed over me, I think, a lot because of, other than the slow moments when things popped up like as important and people cheered. But I'm curious to watch the action again.
So,
because it didn't, like, it just all felt very samey to me, other than Thor, Cap with the hammer, the sequence where they're all trading the glove off, Captain Marvel flying through Thanos' ship. And I know there's a ton of other stuff that happens.
Shalyah, do you have any thoughts
about it? But
it's
so... Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to absorb that much at once. Like, it is such... there's so much going on. I was so caught up in the adrenaline and emotion of all of it that I couldn't tell you most of what happened. I just know I was having fun.
Right.
And feeling things. But you're at that point I was just completely along for the ride and having trouble absorbing anything.
So for me, the problem here is sort of the Marvel battle mentality that these movies have kind of played on whenever they do big battle scenes, which is that you're often entirely invested in the narrative chronology of one side only, that the other side simply becomes fodder.
Yep.
And if you think sort of consequentially to the other biggest thing that's happening on the planet pop culture wise at this particular moment, it's Game of Thrones. And in Game of Thrones, which is basically going to air, I think, at the time that we release this episode, the next battle. But even previous battles, like for example, if you think about the Battle of the Bastards, you know what? You're really invested in the tacticianhood of each side. And the problem here is that when Thanos brings his entire Chitauri army or whatever it is he's bringing, they're just faceless fodder. Like, you don't really care about what they can do. You don't really care about how they're going to do things. You don't care about the consequences of what they do. You know, like, they're just there. And that's the sort of muddled area. I agree that, you know, again, this should all be brought back to this film is an amazing accomplishment and bringing back all these characters and multi-strands and all this sort of stuff. And every hero kind of gets a moment. We've talked briefly about the sort of woman, you know, #woman moment being sort of awkward and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the battle doesn't really register because it's so big and there's so little dynamics played to what this battle is. It becomes, I think, as Josh Larson had kind of talked at, punchplosions. You know, like, it's just kind of like punchy, and it's sort of, you're kind of there or not.
Why I think it works, even though it did wash over me, is the punchplosions are literally the backdrop for small character moments. You have a Iron Man one, you have a Cap one, you have a Hulk one, you have a Hawkeye one, you have a Scarlet Witch one.
Oddly, I can't remember what Hulk did in this fight.
Hulk didn't do much. He was tapped out because he did the first snap.
Right. Okay.
So he didn't fight. His whole arm was effed, and he was out.
Right.
I wish that there was. Actually, I don't know.
The battle works. Here's where it works. It works when it's Thor, Captain America, Iron Man versus Thanos. That four group, like, I couldn't care less about anything else that's going on around the film. The battle, the actual mechanics of battlehood works best when it's those characters.
Well, because it's smaller. I mean,
and we know what Thanos can do. We can know what, and that's what we're invested in.
Although he has a magic spinny sword that's like a boomerang now, but sure. Here's where I think the Marvel Universe hit peak understandability of everything that you were talking about, and punchplosion, and that is Captain America Civil War, because it's the battle. I think that's still probably the best battle out of all of these films, is because it's big enough where you're impressed and you have this awe-inspiring shit.
You're talking about the airport,
at the airport scene,
yeah, and what's happening on both sides.
But it's small enough where you can actually understand everything that's happening, because it's between like 13 people,
and you know what each,
and you know,
yeah. Whereas this, you don't sort of know what they're about.
So I know they have to keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and what I like that they do, while they know that they have to keep doing that, is have more and more important small moments interspersed between it.
Yeah. Comparatively, again, Game of Thrones, Battle of the Bastards is just a masterclass on where this can work, and where, you know, a film like this you kind of would hope would kind of
Again, it's interesting because the battle, I don't think, is the point of the film. It's the character arcs behind the thing. Where I do think, honestly, especially Battle of the Bastards, the point of Battle of the Bastards is the battle, like the characters and the things that happen to the characters and the outcome, etc., is important. But that's not what they're filming. Is that the important thing that the creators are making is the battle itself.
Just one final note. I know, Shalyah, you want to jump in there. Is that the Battle of the Bastards is an extension of the battle is an extension of what's happening with all those characters, and that's why it works.
But I think it also works better because the point, like what the filmmakers are doing in the Battle of the Bastards is wanting to show a legitimately full and rich sort of contextual battle.
Yeah,
I think this movie is so many. Again, as I said, so many plate spinning. This movie knows, because there's way more plate spinning than even Game of Thrones, and especially in its time length that it has to fill them in. It knows which plates to put down and which plates are more important. And in this case,
right.
Anyway,
sorry.
I was just going to say, and with a comparison to Battle of the Bastards that works as well, in any situation where there is a big bad, they have an army of disposables.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they themselves are selfish and self-centered, and that is their character. They are what's important, and they don't care who they throw at you or what they throw at you. They just want you to die. And the good guys have to band together, and so they are all... So there's always going to be one guy with cannon fodder and a bunch of people standing together to fight him in that kind of dynamic. Something with the Battle of the Bastards is that it's not really that, to the same extent, because there are so many characters on both sides, but you really are just focusing mostly on, like you said, like the fighting, but also like it's a big fight, but creepy what's his name is not the big bad.
Ramsay.
He's not the Night King.
I think
he's gonna throw fodder.
Yeah.
You
it's
know?
an extension of their characters there. That's what it's storytelling through action.
Not the battle. Battle of the Bastards is a big, great battle, but Ramsay Bolton is not the big bad of Game of Thrones. He's some little twerp.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes it fun. Yeah.
And,
which might even play back to the Civil War.
Great, accomplishment in what they did, but he's not the big bad.
Right.
So and the big bads almost always don't care about their own army. They just want them to kill. So it's hard to know their story because there's always one person with a story and then a bunch of crones that they're like, fuck you, I don't care what happens, just fight them. Yeah.
Thanos has that kind of moment in this battle where he says, fire down, bring fire. And his lieutenant says, but our own men. And he says, just do it. And it's kind of that moment that you're kind of describing. I think what it is the point that I think I was making here is that we just don't quite know or comprehend the dynamics of the fodder.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's fine. It's big, it's impressive to look at. There are moments in it. I think, the moments that ring true to me are the minutia of Captain America getting Thor's hammer, Captain America standing against the entire army in that sort of splash page scene, and the finale of Tony magic handing this fucking the stones.
I am Iron Man line.
So I think we should talk really specifically about that now.
Sure.
The conclusion of this film and where it's all heading towards. Which is again a sort of unwinding of Infinity War, but it's also a conclusion of the Iron Man saga.
Yes.
I'm curious how you guys, how many tears were spilled during this scene?
It's weird. Of the crying, I didn't do the most crying with Tony because I kind of went into it accepting his death.
Right.
I was like, there's no way Iron Man's making it out of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my attitude towards the beginning of the beginning, not the beginning, but from the beginning of this film is I was like, he's doomed, to accomplish what they need to accomplish cinematically and plot wise, Tony has to go.
Yeah.
And so I was not as emotionally affected as I was by some other endings for characters. Like Cap getting to finally have that dance made me fucking sob.
Yep.
But Tony, I was like, this was always gonna happen, and at least he did he did something that was worth it, Yeah. I think his death was a payoff that was totally worth it and earned, and but yeah, I didn't have the emotional, I heard people sobbing. Yeah. People were like, ah. I'm like, oh my God, pull yourself together. You knew this was coming. Calm down. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't have the same emotional impact as a lot of other things because I was expecting it.
Right. Yeah.
Not in a bad way, not in a I saw this coming, but in a way where I was like, I was prepared for this.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I have no qualms with him pulling a pickpocket with the stones only because it was his glove.
Yeah.
It's an Iron Man glove, so he obviously has control over how those things are socketed.
Yeah.
I love the line. His death scene for me was intense and worked very well because you had almost like a couple of the greatest hits of his emotional resonance. You had both Pepper, you had Peter Parker, and Pepper like telling him that he's going to be fine, knowing that he's going to die.
No, I think she's saying we're going to be fine.
We're going to be fine.
Me and my child will be fine, which I think is more important to him.
So everyone, Earth is going to be fine. Yeah. Like you can,
and then he can rest. Tony. That's what she sort of says. And then they have the funeral moment. That all hit me like a ton of bricks. The scene, which I'm curious if they were all actually there at the lake or if they were green screen sort of in because of scheduling. You never know with the pan through. They even got the kid from Iron Man 3.
I was just going to say, I had to look up I was like, who the hell is that guy? And it's the kid from Iron Man 3.
They hang on him for like 10 seconds and everyone's like, burp. And then when Steve goes back and decides to have his normal life, that's a really beautiful point. Like, there's 3 endings to characters in this movie, and they are each individual. They feel true to the character, and they feel different enough where it's not just like this person's dead, this person's dead, this person's dead.
Yeah.
They died in different ways, or they were taken off the board, I'll just say, in different ways. And I really appreciated the way that the relevance that this film placed on each of their arcs and what they did for this overall story. I think the ending on the kiss in the 50s or whatever between Peggy and Cap was beautiful and the most perfect way to go out. I think Peggy Carter, out of a lot of the characters in this whole series, has been done the most dirty in a sense, because her series was brilliant and never kind of got out from under Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., love it or hate it, sort of like Wonka Doodle Shadow.
Did you guys know that one of the actresses on S.H.I.E.L.D. was Mulan? The voice of Mulan?
Yes. Yep.
I didn't.
Yep.
I just found out the other day because my friend was like, I sat by Mulan at the premiere. Who's on S.H.I.E.L.D. And I was like, what?
No, she's great.
What?
And so, I just think I think the ending and the way that both Tony went out and Widow went out and Cap went out was perfect for not only the catharsis of an end of a story, but also where it literally. And what I loved about this was there was no post-credit sequence. It was just the noise of of Iron Man hitting his hammer in the cave from the first movie. It's a blank slate for them to continue on. And I really appreciated that in particular out of all of this stuff. What about you, Shahir?
Oh, I was going to ask Shalyah first because I thought look, my general opinion, I think all the endings work. I think Captain America's ending works best. I wasn't that emotionally invested in Tony's death. I kind of had checked out of that character a little bit earlier, I guess. And I wasn't quite as staked in his survival in this whole thing. I felt like Captain America was going to die during the battle scene, kind of, and then cynically was like he should die, but then liked that he didn't, and then he got to have this time travel story. It made the time travel thing pay off in an interesting way.
Yeah.
I like the payoff to handing Falcon the
shield.
The shield. I wish I was Michelle Pfeiffer in that final scene, which is that I could just turn up for one day, have my hair and makeup done, and have my name on the credits. Same with Marissa Tomei. But I think I think the ending is the appropriate gravitas for everything that has happened in the 22 movies leading up to this.
Same with Nick Fury too.
Yeah, Nick Fury. Yeah, just turning up for one scene. I want to get that paycheck.
Yeah.
I think I liked that every character got a different kind of ending.
Yeah.
And it was each one was appropriate for their character. Like we said, like Tony, like being told he could rest, because Tony has never rested. Tony, ever since he like realized he didn't like his Playboy lifestyle because it was built on violence, has not, like, I don't think he slept.
No.
You know, like he's been a maniac trying to fix things that he feels his family is responsible for, that he's responsible for. And so for him to get to have that ending makes sense and is a good payoff for his personal journey.
Yes.
To get to die for everyone. And I think Cap getting to just be normal is like go back and just have a normal life is such a like character appropriate. Like that's what, it's not necessarily what the like most glorious end could be. It's what that character actually wanted to have happen. And like same with Natasha, like I was saying, like she got to sacrifice herself in a way that like wipes all the red off her ledger, and Thor gets to just go be a doof in space, and he gets to be a guy with no expectations, and like that for him is an end that he wants, and it's like it's not the biggest, he didn't explode into lightning or anything. He just is like, I'm gonna go be a guy that plays video games in space, like that's what I want to be, but like. Hulk kind of started out with his own balance. Like he had already figured himself out.
Plus a killer wardrobe, by the way. Yeah. The Hulk's wardrobe is like, I'm just like, which big and tall store in a post-Thanos world has those jeans?
I think he has the money these days to get some tailor-made.
You need a lot of fabric.
Jeans and no shoes. I love that he was like, fuck shoes.
You also need to like have it engineered in case he like hulks out. Like these are non-tearable. Like, and what underwear is he wearing?
If Tony Stark can develop the Spider-Man suit, I'm sure he could help
make jeans for.
I just love those jeans. I liked his whole like Hulk's. It was again very dad aesthetic. He's like wearing sweat tops and things. I was like, yeah, I'm with this.
You're kind of dressed like him right now.
Like cowl neck sweater.
Yeah. It's very.
But yeah, I felt really good. Because that's the reality. Like, I had been thinking about how is this all going to end in a more logistical way?
Yeah.
In a like, how are we going to bring the characters back that need to be back? How are we going to? But I hadn't made any guesses or thoughts about like summing up the characters in satisfying ways other than whether they died or not. You know? Right. And so I was really happy with what everyone was given and the like. I wish I liked Anthony Mackie a little bit more, but
cut the check.
I used to think he was like the best, and then I saw him interviewed, and I was like, "Oh, you think you're great? Get over yourself." But like, he is great. Fine, you went to Juilliard. Calm down. But I felt really emotionally satisfied for the characters.
Well, speaking of emotional satisfaction. We should probably. I know we're clocking in at near Endgame length here, but we do want to talk about some of these emails that we got from everybody.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I'll sort of. I want to try to. I've tried highlighting, and Shahir, please add in if I've not highlighted some of your favorite parts. But first and foremost, Gareth, friend of the show, Gareth had written us in. And saying that they were looking forward to our review of Endgame, so thank you, Gareth. But also, the thing about there was a couple questions that they posed, and the one I wanted to talk about a little bit was, did Cap really restore anything at all, or did he just create a new timeline branch where the same events transpired and then the stones came back to where they were? He stayed behind in the past, and that has a change with huge implications.
Yeah, and I think that this is that sort of broader question that we've been talking about, which is like, how does time work in this sort of new quantum reality? I don't quite understand. You said you had an answer for this, like how putting the stones back. I think putting the stones back basically creates the loop that allows Thanos to kind of jump from past to future.
Yes, and the way that Steve works, at first I was talking to Jamie about this over breakfast, and I was a little confused because I was like, well, that kind of messes up Steve's whole thing, because then there's two Captain Americas running around.
Yeah.
But there isn't, because Captain America, the one
is
that
frozen.
becomes Captain America that then goes back in time, is frozen, and then he goes through all of his life with Peggy, and then Peggy dies before all of this happens.
So wait, so what you're telling me is when Peggy dies and Captain America, the young Captain America appears, she's basically had a life with Captain America where he's aged all the way through. And then just at the moment she's about to die, like young Cap walks in and she's like, yeah, choice.
Well, she's going through some Alzheimer's at that point.
Yeah, I know. And so this is all like him appearing as like a new young Captain America is just validating her Alzheimer's.
I think
she had the best Alzheimer's
patient should get Chris Evans to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I just thought
I'm who you've been in love with your whole life, and you're like, oh, I could die.
Yeah, exactly. You're the person.
My husband was this?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of remember the great parts about them.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth, for bringing that up. You had many other wonderful points, but we're trucking on through because this episode's getting long in the Infinity Stone.
And a lot of these emails, again, thank you to every email that came into us. They do repeat the same things. I think that the only point that I wanted to make out with time travel that Gareth mentioned as well is that I thought the time travel and use of stones plot ideas would be lame, but it really worked, justifying it and turned out to be awesome. So, and I think that's something we've echoed through this as well. From Steven, the main downside for me was the time travel plot line. They set out the rules for time travel and then broke it to hell by letting Thanos come forward in time so that the first snap never happened and then pretended they still had to follow the rules. WTF. Other than that, they nailed the landing. It seems like a very a fairly large contradiction there, but I think we've explained that there, which is that the timeline isn't the grandfather paradox that we are all familiar with in Back to the Future, which is that if you go back and kill your grandfather, then you can no longer exist. That's not the paradox that this film deals with.
Nebula kills Nebula.
Yeah, this film deals with a paradox where time is linear and multiples at the same time, which is why Thanos can jump over his snappening self to be killed in the future, and still, if the time stones are returned at the exact moment, he will still get those time stones. That actually doesn't make sense when you work it out loud, because the version in the past hasn't collected the time stones, will now go.
But it doesn't
forward.
matter because everything is always everyone's future. It's one thing.
Right. So, thank you,
actually,
Steve.
the Mobius strip, even though now we're getting really weird, does actually work very well with this. It's the fact, and I didn't really make that connection before.
I mean, that's the Mobius strip is an inverted line that flips over itself so that it's an infinite loop. But you know.
So thank you very much for that, Mr. Steven. Moving on we have at Twitter at Baby Dread says, with all of the stuff they wrote a little bit before out of the way, I think the movie suffered from having too many characters. The build-up for Captain Marvel was huge, and yet it seemed like she was sidelined for the majority of the movie. I ended up liking the first half of the movie a lot more because it was a lot more character-focused. For example, there was a scene with the women in the MCU, although it was cool, really didn't remember what they were doing outside of the fact that they were all sort of like set pieces for women. So we talked about that as well. But I liked all sides for different reasons, but I 100% agree with Dred's sort of analogy of like the storyteller me really liked the first half better, the first third better, and then the both the sugary cereal me and the person who enjoys a good cry me enjoyed the ending better.
I'm going to say something controversial, and Shalyah, I'd like to get your take on this.
Great.
I think Infinity War is a better movie.
Interesting.
Huh. I don't know.
I think
I'd have to really think about that.
I mean, I think time's going to tell for me on that one. I don't want to even make a specific call on that right now. I've had time to sit with the emotional resonance, and I've thought far more about Infinity War than I have Endgame, but that's because Endgame came out yesterday.
Right. Also, I was just going to say, we discussed this, like, the quality of Infinity War was resting on Endgame.
Right.
Yeah.
So Infinity War, if Endgame hadn't been good, it could have ruined Infinity War.
I think, my point here is I think Endgame concludes Infinity War in a satisfying way, but I think fundamentally, if I was to look at both of these films as individual films, Infinity War and the boldness of the ending of Infinity War kind of trumps everything in Endgame, and I think it kind of makes that a stronger proposition.
I mean, it's a bit of Empire, right? Yeah. Like Empire Strikes Back, not the series Empire.
It is an Empire Strikes Back.
I mean, Jussie Smollett's gonna like walk out in the middle of this, and
Oh no,
it's hard though because I love those Ewoks.
Yeah.
I love the Ewoks. Sorry.
Yub nub.
I do.
Yep. One more email here from. This is our first email from Malaysia. So apologies.
We're gonna try the name. We're so sorry.
Mispronounce this, but Weekat. Apologies.
And also email us back with the pronunciation of your name, and we will say it correctly next time.
Quite a few questions here. I think we're going to try and barrel through these. Let's take these let's round robin these and take these one at a time. So the first one will be for you, Shalyah. Question: would it improve how Infinity War turned out if it ended with the beheading of Thanos and the cliffhanger being the discovery of the Infinity Stone's destruction? I under that it's not possible in terms of continuity since they decided to introduce Carol Danvers as a surprise for part 2. I'm thinking from this aspect because I felt the 5 years later jump to be rather abrupt. Yeah. Shalyah?
I read this earlier and was thinking about it actually. So yay, I got this one. I don't know. I think I understand the abruptness of the 5-year jump being huge, but to me, I liked the sort of fake out kind of effect it had, where you are like, okay, they're jumping right back in. The battle's still going. What are they going to do? How are they going to solve this? And then you're like, oh, they didn't. And you have to sit with that for a minute. I appreciated that, and I don't think that if the movie had started there, I would have appreciated the gravity of what happened as much.
Yeah.
The no having to accept that, like, even killing him didn't do anything, I think was a good way to start. For me. Because I think had Infinity War ended with it, I would have felt too much resolution and hopelessness beyond, like, it already is so hopeless.
But there's a mystery to the hopelessness.
Yeah, there's a mystery to the hopelessness. And if it had ended with he already destroyed the stones and has no head now, I would have been like, well, fuck. Like, so I think it even though both endings are hopeless, to me, I was okay with the way they split it because it gave you a thread of something to hold on to in the time it took to wait for the next film.
Yeah. My only response to that question as well is that I think the ending of Infinity War is kind of like the high point, and I love it when a movie kind of drops you at the high point. And it also makes that film be Thanos' film, which I kind of liked as well.
Because he wins, and that's the end.
Matt, this question's for you.
Okay.
I felt quite a handful of the jokes were not as funny as it set out to be. Maybe the comedy aspect of it took me aback seeing the gravity of the story in general. However, the amazing crowd that I was with, bless their loud fan reactions, loved the jokes, punchlines that were written. So I might be in the minority about this. Matt, how did you feel about the comedy of the film?
I thought, honestly, the comedy here worked some of the best in the MCU, weirdly enough. I think because it
More
was...
than Thor Ragnarok?
Well, I said some of the best. Thor Ragnarok is a comedy through and through. This is not a comedy. This is a action kind of drama that has comedy in it. I think that, okay, case in point, Thor Ragnarok, funniest Marvel movie that there is.
Easy.
But there is zero gravity to any of the things that happen in that movie, even down to Thor losing an eye.
Yeah.
Like, is still... doesn't feel heavy because the movie doesn't feel it's everything is flippant in that movie, and that's not a problem. It's just you can't. It's hard to balance those moments of comedy with something that actually matters. This movie, I think, does a very good job, not perfectly, but I think, and a lot of the comedy is relegated to kind of the second act. I feel like there are funny lines and things here and there and callbacks and whatnot, but the levity, there's very little levity in the battle, the final third act battle, and there's zero levity in the funeral, and like it's all sort of catharsis. So I think this movie did a really good job of placing the comedy where it placed it, and when it did, it worked. The ass line is fucking, the through line is great. Rocket, I mean, even Shahir, this is less comedy, but you said this and I was really proud of, I liked the line where you're
proud
like,
of me.
Where you're like, well, that means somewhere on the cutting room floor there's a scene of Natalie Portman fighting a raccoon.
Right, yeah.
It's just like,
yeah.
So
I want that.
I think the comedy worked very well because they knew where to place it, and I do think the audience helps 100%.
Right.
Shahir, this next one's for you. I'm generally interested to know if there are others who are not invested in Clint Barton's family backstory. I felt the introduction of the secret family in Age of Ultron was relatively inorganic, consequentially making it difficult to properly empathize with his intentions for the arc. I'm not sure if it's fair to say that the writers struggled with because the writers struggled to develop that character. Do you think? How did you feel about Clint?
I actually really liked the introduction of his secret family in Age of Ultron, so I might be on the minority from this email. What I liked about it is that up until that point, we have no idea who Clint is.
Yeah, no idea.
And it's I think the film is kind of teasing and defying our expectations of a will they won't they with Clint and Black Widow, and then when we reveal that he has this secret family, that's when we go, oh no, that we're completely wrong about that. He's this other guy. And I like, to me, where it doesn't quite work is I don't quite see the synaptic connection between how Hawkeye losing his entire family to becoming Batman. I sort of I can kind of make this sort of jumps towards it a little bit, but it doesn't quite, like murderous Hawkeye kind of still feels not quite in the world of this film. But, I'm willing to, he's not the main character, so I'm kind of willing to let it play. Where it really does play for me is the Hawkeye, Black Widow, who's going to throw each other off, who's on first kind of gag, who's going to throw
who's on first?
Yeah, who's on first and who's on death.
Yeah. There's only two bases.
I actually like it from that point of view. That the only part that disconnects for me is Bat-Hawk.
Right, I hear you.
Yeah.
And then the last one, Shalyah, you're going to take us home with this one.
Oh, is it about America's ass?
I know, no, but if you can work it into your answer, you get double points.
That's going to be my supplemental podcast to go with this. It's just talking about all the hot parts.
Yeah. Here it is. Final question. Did it make much difference to bring forward the Captain Marvel film prior to Endgame? I got to thinking, why not introduce her here, all omnipotent and slightly mysterious, before giving us a backstory that could be presumably better and more carefully written? Do you think that's the case? Are you happy with the chronology of how we are taught Captain Marvel?
I think that by having Captain Marvel be such a recent addition to our brains, it psyched everybody up for the possibilities. I think if she just shows up in Endgame, you are like, okay, hello. But having that month of being like, Thanos is screwed. She's coming and Thanos is screwed. Having that buildup was a part of the movie viewing experience for me. Getting to spend time being like, oh, what's she going to do to him? And then having it pay off, but then didn't solve anything was I felt like that added to my enjoyment of the overall saga.
Yeah.
Was having that time to stew about it. I also am hyper aware of how, speaking of men's rights activists, how fast the internet will jump down the throat of any woman who dares have powers without an explanation.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, poor Rey in Star Wars.
Yeah.
People are still like, I just don't get how some girl could be good at stuff. And it's but you're fine with literally everyone else being just good at stuff. So if she had shown up in this movie and just been good at stuff, the trolls that would have come out of the woodworks to drag her, I mean, they're already are like, we don't need this. We're being ruined because a woman has power. So I'm fine with it just to be like, shut the hell up. We've established she's more powerful than anybody else. Go back to your basement and jack off. No one wants to talk to you. I appreciate from that perspective, just from existing in the world, that we don't have to have some stupid conversation online where people are debating whether or not a woman should be allowed to just be good at things.
Yeah. Right.
Because that happens all the time and I hate it. It's not a real conversation.
Yeah.
We're humans.
Yes.
And I think the comparable note there is Carol Danvers' introduction versus Black Panther's introduction in Civil War is as sort of a comparison as to how the story was done and handled. I know we're coming out to our end here. There's just one last topic that I want to talk about, which is kind of externally to Avengers and more about Disney at this point.
Well, real quick, we're done with emails, right?
I
think so, yeah. So I just wanted to say real quick, thank you so much to everyone who emailed in. Please continue to tell us your Endgame thoughts, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or onlymoviepod on Twitter. We'd love to hear your stuff. Also, thank you again for Malaysia for writing in. That's so freaking cool. So I hope we answered a lot of your questions.
I want to do this because I don't want to be the last voice on this, but I just wanted to add this part of the conversation, which I thought was really interesting.
The meta.
A.O. Scott wrote a review for the New York Times, as he does most of the time. And this, I just sort of took this and then started spiraling out about this sort of for the last couple of days and thinking about it. Disney's and Marvel's accomplishment will be duly inscribed in the annals of commerce to be studied for many years to come. There has been a variety of silly movies and somber movies, chapters that proclaim their topicality, and episodes that embrace pure escapism, as well as consistency. Any single film can serve as a point of entry, and insider status is easy enough to obtain. There's never been anything difficult or challenging about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's my insert there, which is a limitation as well as a selling point. And the interesting thing I think I wanted to talk about here is that with the merger of Disney and Fox recently, and the announcement of Disney Plus, there's this article going in the Hollywood Reporter right now where there's a discussion about films that were slated to be developed by Fox, which are now being axed by Disney because Disney has a stronger emphasis on a couple of things. One is, and remember, this acquisition of Fox was a $71 billion acquisition.
Yep.
One is
just
that
have 1,000.
Yeah, just got 1,000. Yeah, just give me just give me 1,000.
I mean, I was gonna get Fox, but I didn't have $76.9999999 billion dollars.
Do you think Disney would want to buy a human being? They can buy me.
They have.
If Disney would just pay for our coffee, we're doing so much free advertising.
I'd be fine.
Right? Yeah. But Disney now has their film studio chief has started to jettison a number of Fox projects because of the purchase of Disney, which means that they have an emphasis on a couple of things. One is more franchise-friendly films, so films that will spawn out into franchises. And the second is films that don't defy the Disney model of business. Now, Shalyah, I know you worked at Disney for a number of years. And like one of the, oddly, in the film slate of Disney, that they're very concerned about is smoking, for example. And there's this, Disney's basically saying, hey, Fox, you've got this slate of movies. Let's start culling things that A, don't add up to franchises, and B, involve things that don't quite work against the Disney model. An example is a new film from the director of The Hate You Give, which it was called On the Come Up, which The Hate You Give made lost $30 million to a $40 million budget. It made $40 million. So, in other words, that director's next film has now been taken off the slate because of this Disney merger. The second part of this is Disney is about to acquire a bigger stake in Hulu. To the point where Disney will now be a 90% stockholder in Hulu. I guess all of this is saying Avengers Endgame has to make in the vicinity, I think, of around $1.5 billion to be a profitable proposition from Disney. It most likely will. The offshoot of this, and the cynical part of me says that Avengers' success, I think, is sort of somewhat bittersweet, which is that it is a wonderful tribute to the 22 films that have come before it. It is a wonderful tribute to the fan base around it. It also may signal a slightly different proposition from one of the biggest media conglomerates on the planet, now owning one of the largest media production systems on the planet. It's just sort of an interesting side note to think about, what the success of Avengers will mean for other films and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's already changed things so much, for whether it's the Disney run or not. It's changed. There's so much pressure on franchising everything.
Yeah.
And so little emphasis on original storylines. We were already seeing so much of the fallout of it that
I think the two of the trailers
just probably gonna keep going.
Two of the trailers we got in our screening were for the Summer of Will Smith. One is Gemini Man, and the second is Aladdin. One is a repeat of a Disney franchise.
Thank God they didn't show me Aladdin. They did show me. They showed me Lion King, which I'm already annoyed about. Yeah. But please no Aladdin. Thank you.
And then this all came with a really wonderful sort of battle that's going on between Abigail Disney, who's like one of the descendants of the Disney Empire, calling out Bob Iger for his enormous pay package. And basically, again, this sort of just gets into this idea that what you're dealing with here is the largest conglomerate on the planet, and whether, I guess it's not quite an all or nothing proposition, but just acknowledging that the wake of Avengers Endgame means a lot of things. I think it's a very wonderful and appropriate finale and send-off to everything we've seen before. But I think, to A.O. Scott's point, which is that none of the films have ever been that challenging or difficult to enter with, is kind of part of the both the appeal and the limitation of the series. And I just kind of want to inject that, slight model of cynicism into the end of the conversation, just to think about, because we know that this is not the end game. There is a Black Panther 2, there's a Spider-Man Homecoming, there is a Disney Plus, a million series coming as well.
Yeah.
Just kind of putting that out there. I did enjoy the film.
I think that's all very interesting. I think that the way that we will move forward in media, I mean, honestly, I think Disney is not going to stop growing. I mean, that's just the way, case in point. The mouse will always need to be fed. Something I'm actually very interested in is in a couple of years down the line, when Disney owns most of everything and we are being fed sort of the same thing, when the cultural tipping point happens. And there will be a time when too much similarity will drive people away, and then we're going to have a bit more of what we've had sort of in the past, when countercultures come up, or weirdly enough, the example that I'm sort of thinking of right now is punk music.
Right.
Now, granted, punk, is not as sort of strong as it used to be, because I think that there's a lot of different, whatever. But I'm interested in seeing what the anti-Disney becomes.
Right.
And I think that we won't see that for a couple years, because they're just getting to the point where they're getting all their Infinity Stones. Yeah.
Here's what I'll say.
Okay.
The entire world is run by billionaires and corporations. If I have to belong to someone, I'd rather it be Disney.
I mean, that's
I trust them more. They're all evil corporations. Look, they're all evil corporations. But at least Disney puts emphasis on being kind to others.
I mean, in their media. I'll even say their propaganda absolutely says that. Whether or not
nice, at least.
Yeah.
Oh, you should read this Abigail Disney article about she's calling out Bob Iger's. It's really fascinating. Basically, Bob Iger has a CEO ratio of 1,400 times the average wage in Disney.
Minimum. I was paid $7.25 an hour when I worked at Disneyland, no benefits, and I still am draw the company line.
Oh, wow.
Because I also worked for Viacom, and guess who fucked me harder?
Yeah.
Disney was still nice. They paid me way less an hour, but ruined my life less a little bit.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's look, both of in your specific situations there, Shalyah, both have screwed you in different ways, but both should have been better. No question. But it is interesting where our allegiances will lie if people do at least acknowledge you in certain ways more than other ways. You know what I mean? And I think Disney, you could think of this as kind, you could think of it as manipulating and evil, has kind of nailed that balance of we're screwing you, but you're going to kind of be okay with it. Yeah. Anyway. That is very.
We're screwing you, but you get a Dole Whip.
Yeah. Anyway,
so aren't you fine?
Shahir, thank you very much for bringing that up. I just want to say one last thing about this, because again, I've had such a strong and Shalyah, I've brought you. I know you watched all the films before, but you've been my.
This was something else. I'm your Padawan.
You've also been a bit of a compass in a sense, because even I've had conversations with a lot of people, and I really both of you, to be perfectly honest, have moved the needle in different directions of what these films mean, what the greater experience of them existing means, small moments, etc. through our series of all the films, Shalyah, and just Shahir through going back and forth on arguing about all of them in what I hope constructive ways. But even through all of that, I will say that this, for me, with its conclusion, and I will consider this a conclusion, I will still be excited to see what they do next, but the story arcs that I am as emotionally tied to as I am have sort of come to a close for the most part. Yeah. I will say that though, for all of the good and bad that this film is and represents, even beyond it, the MCU experiment and storytelling is the most impressive and emotionally relevant form of, this is weird and people can come at me, bro, but like is the most important and impressive sort of storytelling thing that I've experienced in my lifetime. And not to the sense of like it's changed me as a person or things sort of like that. Like there are moments in life that have changed me far more than the Avengers movies have, of course. But as far as like a piece of media affecting my thought process and my emotional ties with fake people, this series has done that the most in spades. And I am, for all of the issues I've said and all of the stuff we've talked about, I still am very glad that not only have I gotten to experience this film and this entire ride, but that I've gotten to experience it with people that, like the both of you, who both are on board and not on board, and just like the conversations I've had about bullshit stuff that 13-year-old me would never imagine that adult me could have a conversation about has been really cathartic. And I hope that that's the same for a lot of people. And that's sort of how I'll end on that one.
This is your end game?
This is my end game.
This is the end of the podcast, by the way.
This has been the only podcast about Avengers Endgame.
Until the next one.
Until the next, no, will there be another, different movies? Shalyah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being you and being here.
Well, one of those things I can't help, but the other one you're welcome for.
If people want to find more of the amazingness that is Shalyah Evans, where can folks find you?
Oh, well, the first place to start would be at Shalyah Evans on Twitter. And the second place would be the same thing on Instagram. And the third place would be to Freddy Krueger My Dreams.
What?
No.
Don't do the third one.
Just find me online. It's fine. I'm considering starting an email that's like fake manager at ShalyahEvans.com.
No, I just read a story that Hugh Grant did this.
Yeah, did you hear about the Hugh Grant thing?
Hugh Grant had his own was his own agent for like the first 5 years of his career. We would just send do it.
Yeah, done.
He said
done.
It solved him.
So
he put on a Scottish accent.
Me and I will wear a scarf on the phone and pretend to be a different person.
There you go.
Donald Trump did the same thing too, by the way.
Oh.
But I'm better at act. I'm like good at voices and stuff.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Shahir, when you are not coming to terms with your feelings on the MCU and making some surprise, at least to me, feelings of how you felt about the entire journey, where can folks find you?
Yo, my Instagram handle is FatThorio. No, it's www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD.com, where most of my postings are generally about being Fat Thor or Dad Thor. Matt, where can people find you in the wake of the most important cinematic experiences of your life?
You can find me surfing all of the realities created by this film to their maximum potential at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram and PSN, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. You can also find some of the good works we're doing on Extra Credits channel on YouTube. We're just releasing, oh my God, a wonderful 2-part series on Extra History on Queen Nzinga, who was an African queen, and her story is legitimately amazing and nuts. So that drops, I think, this Saturday. So it will be 2 days ago in your timeline. If this drops Monday or Sunday, you'll figure it out. Go there, check it out. With that, I guess we should all go enjoy our Saturdays and try to process all this until at least Shalyah and I are inevitably dragged back to the theater by our own emotions.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys for having me on for this, because one of the best parts to me about Marvel or about any fandom is getting to talk to people and like break stuff down. And I don't always for how much people are like, oh, everybody likes that stuff. I do have a hard time finding people that I can really talk to. So thank you for having me again, guys.
No, of course. Anytime. You are our Marvel friend in arms.
But we should also just start like a guest spot where you just drop in on every single episode. Like you could just like knock and be like, well, who's that?
Oh, who's that? Fine, I'll move back to New York.
Come back to New York, Shalyah.
All right.
All right, everybody. You'll hear us next week. I don't know exactly what it will be next week.
I think we're going to do a Netflix.
That's right.
One of my favorite filmmakers on the planet, Lee Chang-dong, South Korean filmmaker. Mm-hmm. His film Burning will be released on Netflix this week. So hopefully, as long as I've got the timeline right, we will post about it on Twitter as has been requested.
Right.
To let you know that film will be available.
And if you don't have the timeline right, just snap your fingers.
Just snap your fingers, and we will be on an alternate timeline where Burning was the #1 film of all time.
So that's it. Every time we do a podcast now, it's going to be the #1 film, no matter what.
Yeah.
Anyway, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I melted ice cream.